Let me tell you something about the moment your marriage dies. It doesn't happen in a courtroom with gavels and lawyers. It happens on a Tuesday afternoon in suburban Chicago, when you're on your knees in the garage, unpacking the last box of medical supplies from 18 months of hell, and your husband walks in, holding papers that will change everything. The sharp chemical smell of hand sanitizer still clung to my clothes. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 52 years old, and I thought I'd lived through the worst thing a person could survive. I watched the man I loved, the man I'd been married to for 28 years, waste away to 97 pounds. Watched stage 4 lymphoma try to steal him from this earth, held his hand through 93 chemotherapy sessions, cleaned up vomit at 3 a.m., changed sheets soaked with fever sweat, injected anti-nausea medication into his thigh while he screamed that he wanted to die. I gave up everything. My career as a pharmaceutical executive, gone. My $180,000 salary, gone. My retirement account, $87,000 drained to pay for experimental treatments his insurance company denied. My health, 30 pounds melted off my frame from stress and skipped meals. My hair turned gray in 6 months. Arthritis took root in my hands from lifting him in and out of bed. I became a ghost haunting my own life, existing only to keep him breathing. But he made it. Against 30% odds, Robert survived. 3 weeks ago, his oncologist said the words that should have been our miracle, cancer-free. So there I was, kneeling on cold concrete, finally putting away the last remnants of our nightmare. V-poles, medication timers, the stupid bell we'd ring after each treatment, trying to make horror feel like victory. My hands were shaking as I folded the blanket he'd wrapped around himself during those endless drives to the hospital. That's when I heard his footsteps, confident, strong, so different from the shuffling weakness I'd supported for 18 months. "Sarah?" Robert said. His voice was flat, cold. "We need to talk." I looked up. He was holding a manila envelope. Behind him, in the driveway, sat a silver BMW I didn't recognize. And in the passenger seat, watching through the window with a smirk, was Vanessa, his 27-year-old physical therapist, the woman who'd been helping with his recovery for the past 4 months. He dropped the envelope at my feet like I was a stranger, like I was nothing. "Divorce papers," he said. "I've already signed them. I need to live for me now, Sarah. After everything I went through, the pain, the suffering, I deserve to be happy. You're exhausting. You remind me of being sick. Vanessa makes me feel alive again." The world tilted, my vision blurred. 18 months of sacrifice, every penny I had, my career, my health, my life poured into saving him, and this was my reward. I stood slowly, my arthritic knees screaming, looked him dead in the eyes, and here's what my husband didn't know, what neither of them could have possibly known. I'd been documenting everything, every cruel text, every late-night work call with her, every dollar he'd secretly spent on his mistress while I thought we were broke, every insurance fraud he'd committed, every lie. And the big secret? I never actually quit my job. I'd been consulting remotely this whole time, earning $150 an hour while he thought I was destitute. I had $240,000 he didn't know existed. They thought they were destroying a helpless, exhausted woman. They had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who had nothing left to lose and every resource needed to win. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you sacrificed everything for, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this revenge, it's about to get surgical. Word count 500. To understand the depth of the betrayal, you need to know what we had, what I thought we had. 28 years. That's how long Robert and I had been married when the world stopped spinning. We met in college, Northwestern University, 1995. He was pre-med, charming in that dorky way that made me feel safe. I was the ambitious one, double majoring in chemistry and business, already planning my pharmaceutical career path before most people had declared a major. We built something real, or so I believed, A brick colonial in Naperville with a mortgage we'd refinanced twice. 2 cars, always reliable but never flashy. Retirement accounts that grew slowly, steadily. The kind of boring financial planning that meant we'd actually make it to retirement. Sunday morning pancakes. Wednesday night trivia at O'Malley's. Annual trips to Door County where we'd rent the same cabin and pretend we were still 25. Robert ended up in medical sales instead of becoming a doctor. The money was good, around $95,000 a year with commissions. But my career? That's what really built our comfortable life. I worked my way up at Grayson Pharmaceuticals over 23 years. Started as a regulatory associate, drowning in FDA documentation and approval processes. But I was good at it. Better than good. I understood how to navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of drug approvals, how to speak the language of both scientists and lawyers, how to turn clinical trial data into compelling regulatory narratives. By 2022, I was Vice President of Regulatory Affairs, $180,000 base salary plus bonuses. I led a team of 12 people. My signature appeared on new drug applications worth billions. I testified before FDA advisory committees. I was respected, powerful, the kind of woman who walked into conference rooms and immediately changed the temperature. Robert was proud of me, or he seemed to be. "That's my wife," he'd say at parties, beaming. "She's the one who gets the drugs approved that save lives." He'd squeeze my hand, and I'd feel like we were partners, equals, a team. Then came October 12th, 2022. Robert had been complaining about night sweats for weeks, fatigue that didn't make sense, swollen lymph nodes in his neck that he kept dismissing as probably just a cold. I finally dragged him to our primary care physician, Dr. Harrison, who took one look and ordered immediate blood work. The call came 3 days later. I was in a meeting with the FDA when my phone kept buzzing. Robert, Robert, Robert. I excused myself, stepped into the hallway with its harsh fluorescent lighting and antiseptic smell. "Sarah," his voice cracked. "It's cancer, stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma." The hallway tilted. Stage 4. That meant it had spread. Aggressive. Advanced. "What's the prognosis?" I asked, my regulatory brain clicking into analytical mode even as my heart shattered. Dr. Harrison referred me to an oncologist. 30% 5-year survival rate. He was crying. My husband, who never cried, was sobbing on the phone. "Sarah, I'm 54. I'm not ready to die." I drove home going 20 miles over the speed limit, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Found Robert sitting on our back deck staring at nothing. He looked small, breakable, terrified. "We're going to beat this," I said, kneeling in front of him, taking his face in my hands. "Whatever it takes, whatever we have to do, you're not dying. I won't allow it." The oncologist, Dr. Patricia Okonkwo, brilliant and direct, laid out the battle plan. Aggressive chemotherapy, 6 months minimum, possibly longer depending on response. R-CHOP protocol, rituximab, cyclophosphamide, doxorubicin, vincristine, prednisone. The words sounded like weapons. They would be. "You'll need substantial support," Dr. Okonkwo said, looking at me. "Someone with him constantly during treatment, managing medications, monitoring for infections, getting him to appointments. It's essentially a full-time job." Robert looked at me with those terrified eyes. "But your career," I didn't hesitate, "means nothing compared to you." 2 days later, I sat across from my CEO, Marcus Chen, in his corner office overlooking Lake Michigan. "I need to step down. My husband has cancer. He needs me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What if you don't step down? What if you go remote? Consulting basis, $150 an hour, flexible schedule. You're too valuable to lose completely. Work when you can. No pressure. Your institutional knowledge alone is worth keeping you connected." I thought about our finances. Robert's medical bills would be catastrophic even with insurance. We'd need every dollar. "Yes," I said, "but Robert can't know. He'd feel guilty. I need him to believe I chose him over everything, completely." Marcus nodded. Understood. Official story. You resigned. Reality. You're our ghost consultant. When I told Robert I'd quit, he cried again. Sarah, you love that job. I love you more, I said, and I meant it. With every cell in my body, I meant it. But here's what I've learned about sacrifice. It's only noble when it's appreciated, when it's respected. When the person you're saving doesn't immediately forget what you gave up the moment they can breathe without your help. I had no idea I was about to spend 18 months saving a man who would spend his recovery planning my destruction. The first chemotherapy session was November 3rd, 2022. I remember because it was 3 days after Robert's 54th birthday, a birthday we didn't celebrate because he couldn't keep food down and spent most of it vomiting from the pre-chemo anxiety. The infusion center at Northwestern Memorial smelled like industrial cleaner, trying to mask something darker. Death, maybe. Fear, definitely. Rows of recliners filled with people hooked to IV poles, poison dripping into their veins, slowly enough not to kill them, but fast enough to kill the cancer. Robert gripped my hand so hard I thought bones would break. What if this doesn't work? It will work, I said with manufactured confidence. We caught it. We're fighting it. You're strong. That first session took 6 hours. I watched the chemicals flow into his port, a device surgically implanted in his chest that looked like a small button under his skin. Watched his face go pale, then gray, then a color I didn't have words for. By the time we got home, he was vomiting in the car. I pulled over 3 times on the 30-minute drive. That became our pattern. Treatment every 3 weeks, 6 hours in the chair, 3 days of violent illness, 1 week of slow recovery, then repeat. 93 sessions over 18 months because the cancer was stubborn, because his body couldn't handle the standard protocol, because nothing about Robert's case was straightforward. I became a different person. The executive who commanded boardrooms transformed into a nurse, a servant, a ghost. My days blurred into endless cycles of medication management. Anti-nausea pills at 6 a.m., 2 p.m., and 10 p.m. Temperature checks every 4 hours. Infection was the real killer with a compromised immune system. Feeding him when he could barely swallow. Cleaning him when he couldn't make it to the bathroom. The sleep deprivation was its own special torture. Robert would wake screaming from nightmares about dying. Or he'd spike a fever at 2 a.m. and we'd race to the ER. Or he'd need help getting to the bathroom every hour because the medications destroyed his digestive system. I averaged 3 hours of sleep a night, maybe 4 on good nights, which were rare. My body started failing. The 30 pounds I lost weren't intentional. I simply forgot to eat. Would realize at 8 p.m. I'd only had coffee all day. My hair, dark brown and thick my entire life, started graying at the temples. Then the gray spread like frost, taking over in chunks. My hands developed arthritis from the constant lifting, helping Robert in and out of bed, into the car, up the stairs when he was too weak to manage alone. Some mornings I couldn't make a fist. The pain was bone deep and constant. The anxiety came next. Panic attacks that would hit me in the grocery store when I was trying to buy bland foods Robert might keep down. My chest would tighten, vision tunneling, convinced I'd left him alone too long and he'd fallen or stopped breathing. I'd abandon my cart and race home, only to find him sleeping peacefully. The financial hemorrhaging was almost as brutal as the physical toll. Robert's insurance through his company covered the standard treatments. But Dr. Okonkwo recommended an experimental immunotherapy after the first 6 months when the cancer wasn't responding well enough. It's showing promise, she said, but insurance won't cover it. Experimental protocol. The cost? $32,000 for a 3-month course. I liquidated my 401k, paid the early withdrawal penalties, watched $87,000 in retirement savings, money I'd built since I was 25, money that represented my entire financial security, disappear into medical bills. Robert cried when I told him. "I'm ruining us," he said. "You're worth it," I whispered. "Every penny, every sacrifice, you're worth it." I believed that. God help me, I believed it with everything I had. During all this, I was secretly consulting for Grayson Pharmaceuticals, late-night regulatory reviews after Robert fell asleep, early morning video calls with the FDA while he was too drugged to notice. I'd work in our home office with the door cracked, always listening for him calling me. Billing 20 hours some weeks, 40 hours during better stretches. That money, $150 an hour, went into a separate account he didn't know about. My insurance policy, my emergency fund. But I was drowning. Working, caregiving, managing his terror and mine. I lost myself completely. Stopped wearing makeup. Stopped caring what I looked like. Wore the same rotation of comfortable clothes that were easy to wash when they got covered in vomit, or worse. Stopped seeing friends because I couldn't leave Robert alone. Stopped existing as Sarah Mitchell, pharmaceutical executive, and became only Sarah Mitchell, cancer wife. Month 14, February 2024. That's when Vanessa Price entered our nightmare and made it exponentially worse, though I didn't know it yet. Robert had survived the worst. The cancer was responding finally. He'd regained some weight, some strength. Dr. Okonkwo recommended physical therapy to rebuild his muscle mass and stamina. "You've been through hell," she told him. "PT will help you feel human again." The agency sent Vanessa, 27 years old, blonde ponytail, CrossFit-toned body, and a smile that somehow felt predatory. She bounced into our home 3 times a week with resistance bands and false enthusiasm. "You're doing amazing, Robert," she'd chirp while guiding him through exercises. "Such a warrior." I'd watch from the kitchen. Grateful someone else was managing part of his recovery. Grateful for 30 minutes where I wasn't responsible for keeping him alive. I'd use that time to answer work emails or just sit in silence, too exhausted to think. I didn't see it. The way his eyes followed her, the way he started showering before her appointments and wearing his nicer clothes, the way she'd touch his shoulder just a fraction too long, lean in, just slightly too close. I was too tired to see the snake entering our garden, too depleted to notice my husband was healing in all the wrong ways. By month 16, April 2024, Robert was in full recovery mode, still getting maintenance treatments, but functional, strong enough to drive himself places, strong enough to start reclaiming his life. And that's when everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd given, every piece of myself I'd destroyed to save him, all of it stopped mattering to the man I'd bled myself dry to keep alive. June 18th, 2024. That's the date Dr. Okonkwo said the words that should have been our celebration, our miracle, our new beginning. "Robert, you're cancer-free. Complete remission. The scans are clean." I burst into tears right there in her office. 18 months, 93 treatments, $87,000 in savings gone, my career transformed, my health destroyed, but he made it. We made it. Against 30% odds, we had won. I reached for Robert's hand. He let me take it, but something in his grip felt absent, like he was tolerating my touch rather than returning it. In the parking lot, I suggested celebrating. "Let's go to Francesca's, your favorite. Get that pasta you've been craving." "I'm tired," he said flatly. "Let's just go home." That was the first sign. His distance, his coldness. Like surviving cancer had somehow made him forget who'd kept him alive through it. The changes came rapidly after that, like he'd been holding back and suddenly felt free to stop pretending. New clothes. Suddenly, our closet filled with expensive gym wear, designer jeans, fitted shirts that showed off the muscle he was rebuilding with Vanessa. "I need to look good again," he said when I asked about the credit card bills. "I've looked like death for a year and a half." "Late nights, catching up with friends," he'd claim. "I've been isolated too long. I need to reconnect." He'd come home at midnight smelling like perfume and lies, the gym obsession. 3 hours a day with Vanessa, who'd somehow transitioned from physical therapist to personal trainer to constant presence. "She's helping me feel alive again," he'd say. "After being so close to death, I need that energy." Boys' trips to Madison, to Milwaukee, to Chicago downtown, weekend disappearing acts where he'd claim he needed space to process what I went through. He'd return distant, distracted, his phone suddenly password protected. I wasn't stupid. I knew. But I was so exhausted, so depleted, so convinced that this was just trauma response, that he needed time to adjust to not dying, that I let it slide. Let him pull away. Let him treat me like I was the disease instead of the cure. July turned into August. I started noticing hotel receipts in his wallet. The Langham, the Peninsula, places we'd never been able to afford. Text message previews on his phone when it lit up on the counter. Can't wait to see you tonight with a heart emoji. From Vanessa. My hands shook when I picked up his phone. The password locked me out. When did he add a password? I tried our anniversary, his birthday. Nothing worked. That night, I waited until he was asleep and went through his laptop. He'd been careless there, left his email open. The thread with Vanessa went back 4 months, April, while he was still in treatment, while I was still giving him injections and holding his hand through his fear. You make me feel like a man again. Sarah just reminds me of being sick. You remind me I'm alive. Can't wait until this is over and I can finally be with you properly. Just need to figure out the Sarah situation. She'll be devastated, but she'll survive. She's tough. It's not cruel to choose my own happiness after what I've been through. The Sarah situation, like I was a problem to solve, a loose end to tie up. I closed the laptop carefully, went to the bathroom, vomited until there was nothing left. Then I sat on the cold tile floor and stared at nothing while my marriage died around me. The confrontation happened 3 days later, August 15th, in the hospital parking lot after Robert's final checkup. The appointment where Dr. Okonkwo officially discharged him from active treatment, where she told him how lucky he was, how rare his survival was, how grateful he should be. Robert was silent the whole drive home. I kept glancing at him, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw Vanessa's car, that silver BMW she'd recently bought, with money from where? Physical therapists didn't make BMW money. She was leaning against the driver's door, arms crossed, smiling. "Robert," I said quietly, "what is she doing here?" He got out of the car without answering. I followed, my heart hammering. Vanessa handed him a manila envelope. He took it, then turned to me with eyes colder than the cancer had ever made them. "This is over," he said. Simple, flat, like ordering coffee. "What's over?" "Us, this marriage. I can't do this anymore, Sarah." The world tilted. "You can't do what? Be married to the woman who saved your life?" "You didn't save me," he snapped. "The doctors saved me. The drugs saved me. You just hovered. Reminded me constantly that I was dying, made everything about how much you were sacrificing." The cruelty landed like physical blows. "I gave up everything. And you made sure I knew it every single day." His voice rose, echoing across our quiet suburban street. Neighbors' curtains twitched. Poor Sarah working so hard. Poor Sarah so tired. Poor Sarah giving up her precious career. You think I didn't feel guilty every second? You think I asked for cancer? You think I wanted to be your burden? You were never a burden. I deserve to be happy, he continued, not even hearing me. After what I went through, the pain, the suffering, facing my own mortality, I deserve to live for me now. Vanessa gets that. She makes me feel alive, young, not like some dying old man who needs to be grateful his wife bothered to keep him breathing. Vanessa stepped forward, smirking. "Sorry, Sarah, but he's chosen who he wants to be with. Someone who celebrates his life instead of mourning his almost death." The envelope contained divorce papers, already signed by him, filed with the court, a fait accompli. "When should I move out?" I asked. My voice came from somewhere far away, hollow and mechanical. "I'd appreciate it if you could be gone by next week," Robert said. "Vanessa's moving in. We're starting fresh." Something inside me cracked. No, not cracked. Crystallized, hardened, transformed from soft, caring Sarah into something colder, and infinitely more dangerous. I looked at my husband, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, who just discarded me like medical waste, and I smiled. Actually smiled. "Of course," I said pleasantly. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours. I assume you have one?" Confusion flickered across his face. He'd expected me to beg, to cry, to fall apart. "Yeah, I got a lawyer," he said uncertainly. "Good." I picked up the envelope. "Oh, and Robert. Vanessa? There's something you both should know." They waited, smugness faltering slightly. "I've been documenting everything, every text, every late night, every lie, every dollar you spent on her while I thought we were broke, every insurance claim you filed fraudulently, every single piece of your betrayal." Robert's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "You'll find out." I walked to my car, my paid-off Honda that I'd bought with my secret consulting money. "See you in court." As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror. Robert looking panicked, Vanessa looking less confident. Both of them finally realizing that they hadn't just discarded a tired, broken wife. They declared war on someone who had nothing left to lose, substantial resources they didn't know about, and 18 months of rage that had just found its target. Let the games begin. The night after Robert handed me those divorce papers, I didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the desk in our home office, soon to be just his home office, and took inventory of my weapons. Because that's what this was now, war. And I'd learned something during 40 years of pharmaceutical regulatory work. Documentation is everything. Evidence is power. And I had 18 months of both. I opened my laptop and created a folder, titled it simply, Evidence. Then I started compiling. Medical records, every single document from Robert's treatment, hospital admissions, discharge summaries, medication logs, treatment protocols, but more importantly, my personal notes. I'd kept a detailed journal throughout his illness, documenting every appointment, every conversation with doctors, every decision made. Nurses do that instinctively. We document because lives depend on accurate records. Those notes would prove I was his primary caregiver, that I'd made medical decisions when he was too sick to think, that I'd been present for every single treatment while Vanessa was nowhere until month 14. Financial records. This was the gold mine. Bank statements showing the $87,000 I'd withdrawn from my 401k for his experimental treatment, receipts for medications, medical supplies, the special foods he could tolerate, credit card statements showing I'd charged $23,000 in medical expenses, but also my secret records, my consulting contract with Grayson Pharmaceuticals, invoices showing $240,000 earned over 18 months while Robert thought I was unemployed and broke, every deposit into my private account, all legal, all documented, all hidden. Text messages. I'd been taking screenshots for months. Robert's cruelty in writing. "You're suffocating me with your hovering. I need space from your constant martyrdom. Stop acting like you're the only one who suffered through this." And the Vanessa messages I'd photographed from his laptop. "Can't wait to start our real life together. She's so exhausting, always talking about what she sacrificed. 3 more months and I'll be free. Insurance fraud." This one made my blood run cold when I discovered it. I'd kept copies of every insurance claim submitted during Robert's treatment, regulatory habit. When I cross-referenced them against actual bills received and services rendered, the discrepancies were staggering. Robert had claimed $47,000 in expenses that never happened, treatments he didn't receive, medications he wasn't prescribed, equipment we never purchased. He'd been submitting fraudulent claims and pocketing the insurance reimbursements, felony insurance fraud, federal crime, prison time territory, Vanessa's ethics violations. The Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board has very clear rules about therapist-patient relationships. Dating a patient during treatment, automatic license review, if proven, likely suspension or revocation. I had timestamps of their relationship starting in April 2024, 2 months before he was declared cancer-free, while he was still technically her patient. While she was billing our insurance for therapeutic services, I also had her social media posts from that period, carefully archived. Her at our house, in our home, touching my husband's shoulder just slightly too long. Her professional boundary violations documented in pixels and timestamps. I sat back, reviewing my arsenal. It was extensive, damning, comprehensive. But I couldn't go to war alone. I needed specialists. People who understood how to weaponize evidence into legal and social consequences. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. Margaret Chen answered on the second ring. We'd met at a pharmaceutical industry dinner 5 years ago. She was the keynote speaker about protecting intellectual property. But her day job was family law, specializing in high-asset divorces where one spouse was hiding money or committing fraud. Margaret, I need a divorce attorney who doesn't just win cases, but destroys opposing parties. Her laugh was sharp. Sarah Mitchell, I thought you had the perfect marriage. So did I. Can you meet today? By noon, I was in her downtown Chicago office, a corner suite with windows overlooking the river. I laid out everything: the cancer, the caregiving, the betrayal, the affair, the fraud. Margaret's eyes widened as she reviewed my documentation. This is comprehensive, almost frighteningly so. I'm a regulatory affairs executive. Documentation is my religion. Good, because Robert is about to learn what happens when you betray someone who keeps receipts. She pulled out a legal pad. I'll need a forensic accountant and a private investigator. I know the best. David Torres came recommended as the forensic accountant who'd unraveled a dozen high-profile financial fraud cases. Ex-IRS, current ruthless advocate for clients who'd been stolen from. He arrived at Margaret's office within 2 hours. Show me the money trail, he said, no pleasantries. I handed him Robert's banking records, credit card statements, the insurance claims. He flipped through them with practiced efficiency, occasionally making notes. He's sloppy, David said after 20 minutes. Arrogant sloppy. Thinks he's smarter than he is. I'll have a complete financial picture in a week. Elena Martinez was the private investigator Margaret used for surveillance and background checks, former Chicago PD detective who'd left the force after getting tired of watching guilty people walk. Now she made sure they didn't. I need eyes on Robert and Vanessa, I told her. Where they go, who they see, what they're spending money on, everything. You want proof of infidelity? I want ammunition. Elena smiled. It wasn't friendly. You'll have it. Small victory number 1 came 3 days later when Elena delivered her first report. Robert's been telling everyone you wanted the divorce, she said, sliding photos across Margaret's conference table. His brother Daniel, his co-workers, even his oncologist, claims you couldn't handle his recovery and abandoned him when he needed support most. My hands clenched into fists, the audacity, the complete inversion of reality. Can we prove otherwise? Margaret asked. I pulled out my phone, opened my messages. I have 18 months of texts showing me managing every aspect of his care. I have emails to his doctors, his pharmacy, his insurance company, all from me. I have photos of him in the infusion center with me holding his hand. I have testimony from every nurse who saw me there, every single session. Margaret smiled. Robert just made a tactical error. He's establishing a narrative we can systematically dismantle. When we prove he's lying about this, the court will question everything else he claims. The War Council was assembled. Margaret, the strategist, master of legal warfare. David, the financial surgeon, expert at finding hidden money. Elena, the shadow, gathering evidence in real time. And me, the victim who'd been underestimated, who'd been discarded as weak and broken, who had more power than they could possibly imagine. Robert thought he was the survivor, the cancer conqueror, the hero who'd overcome death. He had no idea he'd just picked a fight with someone who'd spent 40 years learning how to destroy people legally, professionally, and absolutely. The plan was simple. Let him think he'd won. Let him get comfortable. Let him and Vanessa make mistakes while we watched, documented, and waited. Patience is a weapon, and I had 18 months of rage waiting to be unleashed with surgical precision. The hardest part of strategic warfare isn't the fighting, it's the waiting. It's playing weak when you're strong, playing broken when you're whole, letting your enemies think they've already won while you sharpen the knives they don't see coming. I moved out of our house on August 22, 2024, told Robert I was staying with a friend temporarily until I figured things out. Let him see me pack my clothes into my Honda. Looking exhausted and defeated, let him watch me cry. Real tears. Because despite everything, 28 years of marriage doesn't die quietly. What Robert didn't know, I was moving into a condo in Lincoln Park that I'd purchased 3 months earlier with my consulting income. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a balcony overlooking the park, fully furnished, paid in cash, registered under an LLC I'd set up specifically to keep assets hidden. The friend's house story? Entirely fictional, but I needed him to think I was financially desperate. Vanessa moved in the same day I moved out. Elena sent me photos, her BMW in our driveway, her belongings carried through our front door like she was claiming conquered territory. By evening, she'd posted Instagram photos of our new beginning, with Robert looking smug in the background. I sat in my beautiful new condo, drinking wine on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. My phone buzzed with sympathetic texts from friends who'd seen Vanessa's posts. "I can't believe he moved someone in already. Are you okay? What an asshole. You deserve so much better. Let me know if you need anything. Anything at all." I responded to each with variations of the same message. I'm heartbroken but trying to stay strong. Just want this to be over so I can move on. Broken. Devastated. Defeated. That was the image I needed to project. The first mediation session was scheduled for September 10th. Margaret briefed me extensively beforehand. "He's going to come in aggressive," she said. "Arrogant, convinced he has the upper hand. Let him. Don't show any strength yet. We're gathering information. Watching him commit to positions we'll later destroy." "I can play broken," I said. "I've had practice." The mediation took place in a sterile conference room downtown. Beige walls, harsh lighting, a table too large for the 5 people sitting around it. Me, Margaret, Robert, his attorney, a young guy named Chad who looked fresh out of law school, and the mediator. Robert showed up in a new suit, expensive, tailored. He looked healthy, fit, nothing like the skeleton I'd kept alive for 18 months. He barely looked at me. Chad opened with their position. "Mr. Mitchell is seeking a 50-50 split of all marital assets. Additionally, given that Mrs. Mitchell was the primary breadwinner throughout most of the marriage before voluntarily leaving her employment, we believe she should pay spousal support." I let my jaw drop. Looked at Margaret with manufactured shock and despair. "Spousal support? I don't have a job. I gave up my career to take care of him." Robert leaned forward. "You made that choice, Sarah. I didn't ask you to quit, and now I'm the one rebuilding my career after cancer while you sit around feeling sorry for yourself." The casual cruelty was breathtaking. The mediator's expression remained neutral, but I saw her fingers tighten around her pen. "What assets do you have, Mrs. Mitchell?" the mediator asked. I pulled out a folder, carefully curated to show only what I wanted them to see. Our house, which is in both our names. My car, which is paid off. My checking account has about $3,400. My savings account has $8,200. That's it. I liquidated my retirement account to pay for Robert's treatment. All true. What I didn't mention, my LLC-owned condo, my separate consulting account with $240,000, my investment portfolio managed under a different entity. Chad made notes. "We'll need documentation of the retirement account liquidation." "Of course." Margaret slid the paperwork across. Mrs. Mitchell withdrew $87,000 to cover medical expenses that Mr. Mitchell's insurance denied. Experimental immunotherapy treatment. "Which saved my life," Robert said. I'm grateful, but that doesn't mean she gets to hold it over me forever." I let tears form, looked down at my hands. "I never wanted to hold anything over you. I just wanted you to live." "This is productive," the mediator said quickly. "Let's move to property division. Mr. Mitchell, you're proposing to keep the marital home?" "Yes. With Vanessa moving in, it makes sense. Sarah can find an apartment." "I'm staying with a friend," I said quietly. "I can't afford rent yet. I'm trying to find work, but I've been out of the pharmaceutical industry for almost 2 years. It's difficult." Small victory, Thamur 2. Robert's face lit up with satisfaction. He thought I was broken, desperate, weak. His arrogance was making him sloppy, making him overconfident. He had no idea he was building the narrative we'd later use to destroy him. "What about spousal support?" Chad asked. "Given Mrs. Mitchell's age and time out of the workforce, we believe she should contribute to Mr. Mitchell's recovery period." Margaret responded coolly. "Mrs. Mitchell sacrificed her career and her retirement savings to keep your client alive. She's 52 years old, unemployed, and has no significant assets beyond a car. Your position is that she should pay him? She was making $180,000 a year before she chose to leave employment to save his life." The mediation ended with nothing resolved. Robert left looking smug, convinced he dominated me. Vanessa was waiting in the lobby, kissing him congratulations like he'd just won a trophy. In the elevator down, Margaret turned to me. "Perfect. He thinks you're helpless. Now we wait for David's report, build our case, and watch him commit to positions that will destroy him." "How long?" "Another month. Let him get comfortable. Let Vanessa spend his money. Let them make mistakes while Elena watches. Then we strike." I went home to my secret condo, ordered Thai food, and opened my laptop. Had 3 consulting projects waiting. Billed 8 hours that evening at $150 per hour, while Robert thought I was crying into cheap wine at some friend's house. Vanessa posted more Instagram photos that night. New beginnings. Survivor love, Sierra choose happiness. Her and Robert at an expensive restaurant. Her wearing new diamond earrings. Him looking like he'd won the lottery. The comments were supportive at first. Then my friend Rachel, bless her strategic heart, posted a simple question. "Isn't this the physical therapist who was treating him during chemo?" The thread exploded. People asking questions, doing the math, realizing the timeline. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't engage. Just watched the public opinion start to shift while Robert and Vanessa remained oblivious, too drunk on their victory to see the ground crumbling beneath them. Patience, documentation, strategy. And they thought they'd won. The game had barely started. David Torres called me on September 28th. "You need to see this. Can you come to Margaret's office?" An hour later, I was staring at spreadsheets that made my regulatory compliance brain light up with recognition. This was fraud. Systematic, arrogant, documented fraud. "Your husband," David said, spreading documents across the conference table, "has been stealing from both of you for at least 8 months. And he's been phenomenally stupid about it." He pulled up the first sheet. Joint checking account. Between January and August 2024, there were 43 withdrawals totaling $35,420 that Robert made without your knowledge or consent. I leaned forward, examining the dates and amounts. $800 here. $200 there. What was this for? Elena slid photos across the table. Robert and Vanessa at jewelry stores, luxury hotels, high-end restaurants. This $20,400 withdrawal on March 15th? That same day, Vanessa posted an Instagram story showing off diamond earrings, the $3,800 on April 2nd. Hotel receipt from the peninsula for a romantic weekend, while you thought he was visiting his brother in Milwaukee. My hands clenched. He was spending joint funds on her while I was using my retirement account for his medical bills. "It gets worse," David said. He pulled up another document. "Credit cards opened in both your names. You never saw the statements because he had them sent to his office. 5 cards totaling $42,000 in charges. Jewelry for Vanessa. Designer clothes for himself. A trip to Miami in July. Told you it was a boys' weekend with college friends, right? Right. My voice was ice. Vanessa was on that flight. Elena has the airline manifests. Margaret made notes, her expression grim. That's marital asset dissipation, using joint funds for an extramarital affair. Illinois courts take a very dim view of that. His retirement account, David continued, pulling up another file. He cashed it out in February, the full $120,000. Paid the penalties and taxes, which left him with about $79,000 net. Told you it was for emergency medical expenses, correct? I nodded, remembering that conversation. Robert crying, saying the experimental treatment costs were higher than expected, that we might lose the house if we didn't have emergency funds. I'd held him, reassured him, told him we'd figure it out together. All lies. Where did it go? I asked, though I already knew. David highlighted transaction after transaction. Vanessa's rent paid for 6 months, $12,000. A BMW lease down payment and first year of payments, $18,000. Designer purchases, trips, gambling. Yes, he's been gambling heavily at local casinos, losing money consistently. By August, he'd blown through the entire amount. So when I liquidated my retirement account for $87,000 to cover his treatment, my voice trailed off. He'd already spent his own retirement on his mistress and had the audacity to let you sacrifice yours for his medical bills that actually totaled about $31,000 out of pocket after insurance, by the way. The rest, he claimed, was for treatment, but was actually funding his affair. Elena added more photos. Timeline reconstruction. Robert and Vanessa's relationship started in early February 2024. He was still receiving treatment, weaker, more vulnerable. She was his physical therapist, coming to your home 3 times per week. By mid-February, the relationship turned sexual. I have hotel receipts. By March, he was planning the divorce. Downloaded divorce forms to his laptop on March 22nd. Started consulting attorneys in April. I stared at the evidence. While I was sleeping in chairs at the infusion center, holding his hand through his worst moments, managing his medications at 3 a.m., he was planning my destruction. While I was sacrificing everything, he was spending everything on the woman who'd help him throw me away. This is premeditated, Margaret said. Systematic asset dissipation, financial infidelity, and we can prove every penny, every lie, every betrayal. David pulled up one final document. And this is the crown jewel. Apartment lease signed by Robert in Vanessa's name. July 1st. Paid first and last month, plus deposit $7,400 from your joint savings account. He was setting up their love nest while still living with you, while you were still caring for him. Small victory number 3. The paper trail was complete. 43 separate acts of financial betrayal, all documented, all provable, all showing calculated planning while he was playing the grateful patient. What's our move? I asked Margaret. We let him keep talking, keep claiming he deserves half of everything, that you should pay him spousal support. Let him commit to the position that he's the victim, that he acted honorably, that you're the bitter ex trying to punish him. Then we bury him with this. When? Next mediation is scheduled for October 15th. By then, David will have traced every dollar. Elena will have surveillance showing their current spending patterns. We'll have his deposition scheduled where he'll lie under oath about the money. Then we show the judge everything. I looked at the mountain of evidence. Years of marriage, reduced to spreadsheets and receipts and proof of betrayal. Part of me wanted to cry. The larger part wanted blood. One question, I said. The $87,000 I spent on his treatment. Can we get it back? Margaret smiled. It was predatory. Oh, we're getting that back plus interest, plus penalties for asset dissipation, plus attorney fees. Robert's about to learn that betraying a woman who keeps receipts is the most expensive mistake of his life. I drove home through Chicago traffic, watching the sun set over the skyline. My phone buzzed with another Instagram notification. Vanessa had posted a photo of her and Robert at a Cubs game. Expensive seats, champagne, caption, living our best life, no regrets. Cancer survivor strong. No regrets. That's what she thought. I opened my banking app, checked my consulting account balance, $247,130 sign-in, checked my investment accounts, $112,000, checked my LLC property holdings, condo worth $380,000, fully paid. Total assets Robert didn't know about, $739,830. Total assets Robert thought I had, $11,600. I screenshot Vanessa's post, sent it to Elena with a note. Add this to the evidence file. The courts love social media admissions. They were living their best life on my money, my sacrifice, my 18 months of hell. Not for much longer. October brought autumn to Chicago, leaves turning gold and red, crisp air that made you remember why people love this city despite the winters. It also brought Elena's most damaging discovery yet. She called me on October 3rd. I found something. Can't discuss over the phone. Meet me at that coffee shop on Clark Street in an hour. Elena was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back corner booth with her laptop open and a manila folder thick with documents. She slid a coffee across the table, black, 2 sugars she'd remembered, and got straight to business. Vanessa Price isn't just an ethical disaster, Elena said. She's a pattern. And the Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board is going to be very interested in what I found. She opened the folder. Inside were printed social media posts, financial records, and what looked like testimonies from multiple sources. Patient-therapist relationship during active treatment? Elena began. That's the obvious violation. But I dug deeper. Found 3 other patients at the same rehabilitation center who reported boundary issues with Vanessa over the past 2 years. What kind of boundary issues? Inappropriate touching, overly personal questions about their finances and relationships. One 72-year-old man reported she asked him for a loan of $5,000 while treating him for a hip replacement. Another patient, wealthy businessman recovering from a car accident, said she offered additional private sessions at his home that his wife found suspicious. My stomach turned. She's been targeting vulnerable patients? Targeting wealthy, vulnerable patients, Elena corrected. All men, all in recovery from serious conditions, all with money. Robert fits the pattern perfectly. Recently traumatized, grateful for survival, emotionally vulnerable, and with what she thought were substantial assets because you were paying all the medical bills. Has anyone reported her? 2 informal complaints to her employer that were handled internally with written warnings. Nothing formal to the licensing board, until now. Elena pulled out more documents. I've been talking to these former patients. They're willing to go on record. One of them, Gerald Morrison, has text messages from Vanessa discussing investment opportunities she wanted him to fund. Another has voicemails where she's clearly propositioning him for a relationship while still his therapist. And the insurance fraud? I asked, remembering David's findings. That's the kill shot. Elena opened her laptop, showing me billing records she'd somehow obtained. Vanessa billed Robert's insurance for 73 physical therapy sessions between February and July 2024. Standard billing code for therapeutic exercise, neuromuscular re-education, gait training. Each session supposedly 45 to 60 minutes. That sounds reasonable for cancer recovery. Except Robert's treatment schedule shows he was receiving chemotherapy on 15 of those billed dates. He was physically in the infusion center when she claimed to be providing physical therapy at your home. Elena pulled up hospital logs and insurance claims side by side. The dates didn't match, couldn't match. She billed for services never rendered? Worse. She billed for the legitimate sessions but inflated the time and complexity codes to maximize reimbursement. A 30-minute session billed as 90 minutes. Basic exercises billed as complex neuromuscular re-education, requiring specialized equipment. She defrauded the insurance company of approximately $8,400 over 6 months. Insurance fraud, federal offense. And as a pharmaceutical executive who'd spent decades navigating regulatory compliance, I knew exactly how seriously federal agencies took healthcare fraud. "There's one more thing," Elena said quietly. "Remember how Robert's insurance covered most of his treatment, but there were some denials that made you liquidate your retirement account? The experimental immunotherapy, $32,000 that insurance wouldn't cover. I pulled the actual claim denials. The immunotherapy wasn't denied because it was experimental. It was denied because the prior authorization paperwork was filed incorrectly. Missing signatures, wrong diagnosis codes, incomplete documentation, the kind of mistakes that someone with medical billing experience would never make accidentally." Understanding hit me like cold water. Someone filed it incorrectly on purpose? Robert's medical office has electronic records showing Vanessa accessed his patient portal multiple times during that period. She was listed as his home care coordinator for insurance purposes. You authorized that, remember? Standard practice for physical therapists treating patients at home. I did remember. The insurance company required a designated home care coordinator to approve claims for in-home services. I'd signed the form without a second thought. She tanked the authorization deliberately, so you'd have to pay out of pocket. So you'd drain your retirement account while Robert drained his on her. She was setting up the future. Broke wife, husband with access to whatever assets remained. When he divorced you, she thought she'd be getting a substantial settlement from your shared assets. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated, systematic destruction. Financial warfare disguised as a relationship. "What do we do with this?" I asked. Elena smiled grimly. "I've already done it. Filed an anonymous complaint with the Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board 3 days ago. Included all evidence. The patient testimonies, the billing records, the timeline of her relationship with Robert during active treatment, the insurance fraud documentation, everything. Anonymous? Can't be traced to you. Came from a concerned colleague at the rehabilitation center. The board has to investigate once a formal complaint is filed, especially one this detailed." Small victory, there are 4. Within a week, Vanessa received a letter. Elena showed me a photo. Surveillance captured Vanessa opening her mail in the parking lot of her apartment building, then her face going pale. Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board. Re-complaint. Nominal 24 in 3847. Your license is under formal investigation for potential violations of ethical standards, patient relationship boundaries, and fraudulent billing practices. You are required to appear at a disciplinary hearing on November 18, 2024. Until this matter is resolved, your license is suspended pending investigation. You may not practice physical therapy or bill for services during this suspension period. She called Robert immediately. Elena had positioned herself close enough to hear Vanessa screaming through the phone. "Someone reported me. My license is suspended. I can't work. Who would do this?" The irony was delicious. The woman who'd helped Robert betray me was now experiencing her own professional betrayal. No income, no career. Completely dependent on Robert's resources that were about to be systematically dismantled. I sat in my condo that evening drinking wine and reviewing Elena's report. My pharmaceutical industry connections had been useful in ways Robert never imagined. I'd called in exactly 0 favors. Elena had done this entirely on documented evidence. But knowing the investigators, knowing how seriously the board took these violations, knowing the process would be thorough and unforgiving. That was pharmaceutical regulatory expertise paying dividends. Vanessa's career was over. Even if she somehow survived the investigation, unlikely with that much evidence, the stain would follow her forever. She'd never work in healthcare again, never have the income she'd been counting on, never be anything but a burden to Robert. And their relationship? Built on excitement, youth, validation? About to be tested by reality, unemployment, legal bills, stress, and consequences. I texted Margaret. Vanessa's license suspended. Investigation opened. No income. Her response came immediately. Perfect timing. Robert will start financially supporting her right when we reveal his asset dissipation. The court will love that. Karma wasn't just a concept. Sometimes, with the right documentation and the right moment, karma was a weapon you could wield with surgical precision. The insurance fraud angle had been sitting in my files like a loaded gun, and in mid-October, I decided it was time to pull the trigger. I called Margaret on October 12th. I need you to look at something. Robert's insurance claims during his treatment. I think there's criminal fraud. We met at her office that afternoon. I brought 3 years of insurance documentation, every explanation of benefits, every claim submitted, every reimbursement received. I've been keeping these records because that's what regulatory professionals do. We document everything. Show me, Margaret said, clearing her conference table. I spread out the timeline. Robert's cancer treatment ran from November 2022 through June 2024. Insurance covered most of it. His policy through work was actually quite good, but there were out-of-pocket costs, about $31,000 total after insurance adjustments. Which you paid? Which I thought I paid. I liquidated my retirement account for $87,000 because Robert said the costs were much higher, said we were facing bankruptcy from medical bills, said the experimental treatment alone was $65,000 out of pocket. Margaret's eyes narrowed. But it wasn't? I pulled out a separate folder, this one color-coded, cross-referenced, everything a federal investigator could want. I went through every single EOB, matched them against actual bills received from hospitals, doctors, pharmacies. The math doesn't work. I laid out 3 examples. Exhibit A, insurance claim for inpatient hospitalization at Northwestern Memorial, March 2023, 5 days. Infection from neutropenia. Claimed cost, $42,000. Insurance paid $31,000. Patient responsibility, $11,000. Actual bill we received, $8,400. But Robert told me this hospitalization cost us $17,000 out of pocket. Exhibit B, insurance claim for specialized PET scan, May 2023. Claimed cost, $8,900. Insurance paid, $6,200. Patient responsibility, $27,700. Actual bill, $2,100. Robert said this scan cost us $5,000. Exhibit C, insurance claim for home health nursing care, July 2023. 10 visits for IV antibiotic administration. Claimed and billed, $6,400. Services never received. We never had home health nursing. I administered all IV medications myself after the hospital trained me. Margaret sat back. He was inflating the out-of-pocket costs to justify draining your retirement account? Worse. He was submitting claims for services that never happened, receiving the insurance reimbursements, and keeping the money. I found 17 separate fraudulent claims totaling $47,300 in false reimbursements. I pulled out bank records David had obtained. These deposits into Robert's personal checking account, the one I didn't have access to, matched the dates and amounts of insurance reimbursement checks. He was having the checks sent to his office instead of our home address. I never saw them. How did you not notice at the time? Because I was sleeping 3 hours a night keeping him alive, I said, my voice hardening. Because he managed all communications with the insurance company, said he was taking that burden off me. Because I trusted my husband when he said we were drowning in medical debt. I was too exhausted to question, too overwhelmed to audit. Margaret pulled out her phone, dialed a number. I'm calling someone. Federal prosecutor I know who handles healthcare fraud cases. 20 minutes later, we were on a video conference with Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Hammond. I laid out the evidence again. Claims, bills, discrepancies, timelines, bank deposits. Rebecca's expression grew grimmer with each page. Mrs. Mitchell, this is federal healthcare fraud under 18 U.S.C., paragraph 1347. If proven, it carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison per count. You have 17 counts documented here. I want him prosecuted, I said flatly. Not for the divorce, not for revenge, because he committed federal crimes and needs to face consequences. The challenge, Rebecca said, is proving intent to defraud versus billing errors or misunderstandings. I pulled out my final piece of evidence. I photographed every single medical bill we received during his treatment, every EOB. I have a complete parallel record. I also have emails where Robert explicitly told me the costs were higher than they actually were, written documentation of him lying about the amounts. Why did you photograph everything? Because I'm a pharmaceutical regulatory executive. Documentation is my job. I knew we'd be claiming some medical expenses on our taxes, and I wanted complete records. I never imagined I'd need them for this. Rebecca reviewed the photographs on my laptop, comparing them to the insurance claims. This is strong, very strong. The parallel documentation is exactly what we'd need. And you said he had reimbursement checks sent to a different address? His office changed the payment address with the insurance company in January 2023 without telling me. That's consciousness of guilt. People don't hide legitimate reimbursements. Rebecca made notes. I'll need everything you have, all documentation, all evidence. I'll open an investigation through the FBI's healthcare fraud unit. This will take several months, but Mrs. Mitchell, I want to be clear. If charges are filed, your ex-husband is facing serious prison time, Margaret interjected. How does this affect the divorce proceedings? Doesn't stop them, Rebecca said. But if charges are filed, it becomes a major factor in asset division. Fraudulently obtained money is not marital property. It's criminal proceeds. The court can order full restitution to insurance companies and to Mrs. Mitchell for any money she spent that was obtained through fraud. Small victory number 5. I submitted everything to Rebecca's office on October 18th. 3 weeks later, I received a notification that the FBI had opened a formal investigation. Robert would be contacted for an interview. Records would be subpoenaed. His financial accounts would be examined. Elena captured the moment the FBI agents arrived at Robert and Vanessa's house on November 8th. 2 agents in dark suits showing badges at the door. Robert's face visible through the window. Confusion, then panic, then pale terror as they handed him documents. He called his brother Daniel afterward. Elena had gotten Daniel to agree to record the conversation. "They're investigating me for insurance fraud," Robert said, voice shaking. "Something about claims during my cancer treatment. False billing. They said it's federal charges. Dan, I could go to prison." "Did you do it?" Daniel asked. Silence. Long, damning silence. "I needed the money," Robert finally said. "Vanessa had expenses. The relationship was expensive. I couldn't access the joint accounts without Sarah noticing, so I adjusted some insurance claims, inflated a few costs. It wasn't that much." "It's fraud, Rob, federal fraud. I had cancer. I was dying. I deserved to take care of myself." "You weren't dying when you were stealing," Daniel said quietly. "You were recovering. And stealing from insurance companies while Sarah was draining her retirement to save you? That's not taking care of yourself. That's criminal." Robert hung up, but the damage was done. His own brother now knew he was a thief, a fraudster, a man who'd committed felonies while his wife sacrificed everything. That evening, I sat in my condo with a glass of wine and Rebecca's email confirming the investigation was proceeding. The FBI was thorough, methodical, and notoriously successful in healthcare fraud prosecutions. Robert's banking records would be subpoenaed, his communications with the insurance company examined, his lies documented and proven. Vanessa called him screaming that night. Elena heard it through surveillance. FBI agents, federal charges. You told me you had money saved. You said we'd be comfortable. Now you're telling me it's stolen." "Not stolen," Robert tried to explain, "just reallocated. Insurance companies are corrupt anyway. You're going to prison. And I can't work because of that investigation into my license. We're both unemployed, both facing legal consequences, and you want to talk about insurance companies being corrupt?" Their fight lasted 2 hours, ended with Vanessa threatening to leave, Robert begging her to stay, both of them realizing that the future they'd imagined, built on my destruction, funded by my sacrifice, was collapsing faster than they could contain. I forwarded Elena's recording to Margaret with a note. Evidence of Robert admitting to insurance fraud, his own words, on recording. Her response? Beautiful. The divorce trial is going to be very short and very one-sided. The trap had sprung. Robert wasn't just a cheating husband anymore. He was a federal criminal under investigation. Every dollar he'd stolen, every lie he'd told, every fraudulent claim he'd submitted, all of it documented, all of it prosecutable, all of it about to destroy him. And I'd done nothing except keep records, follow the law, document the truth. Sometimes revenge doesn't require you to become a villain. Sometimes it just requires you to be meticulous enough to let the villains destroy themselves. Daniel Mitchell called me on November 12th. The number was unexpected. I hadn't spoken to Robert's brother since the divorce announcement. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then curiosity won. "Sarah," his voice was strained. "We need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere? Anywhere but near Robert's house." We met at a small coffee shop in Oak Park, far enough from both our homes to feel neutral. Daniel was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth looking like he'd aged a decade in the past 3 months. He stood when I approached, and the sadness in his eyes was genuine. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." I sat across from him, ordering nothing, keeping my guard up. "What do you want, Daniel?" He pulled out a folder that seemed to be everyone's move lately and slid it across the table. "I want to apologize, and I want to show you what Robert's been telling me, what I believed until 3 days ago." Inside were text messages, screenshots of conversations between Daniel and Robert spanning the past 8 months. Robert, March 2024. "Sarah's been impossible since I went into remission. Acts like I owe her my entire life because she chose to be a caregiver. I can't breathe around her constant martyrdom." Robert, May 2024. "She's threatened to leave multiple times, says I'm not grateful enough. Honestly, Dan, I think she wants the divorce but wants me to be the bad guy." Robert, July 2024. "Sarah cleaned out the joint account and is hiding money. I think she's been planning this divorce all along. She's going to try to take everything." I read through them, each message a calculated inversion of reality. "He told you I wanted the divorce." Daniel nodded miserably. "He said you were abusive, emotionally manipulative, that you'd been holding his cancer over his head, making him feel guilty for surviving. He painted you as this bitter, controlling woman who couldn't stand that he'd recovered and didn't need you anymore. And you believed him. He's my brother. He almost died. Why would he lie about something like that?" Daniel's voice cracked. "I even refinanced my house to help him. $50,000. He said Sarah had drained everything for unnecessary treatments, that he needed money to get back on his feet, to maybe even pay you back someday." My stomach dropped. "He borrowed $50,000 from you?" "In June. Said it was temporary, just until the insurance reimbursements came through. Said Sarah had been stealing from the joint accounts." He pulled out bank records. "I transferred it to him on June 14th. He promised to pay me back within 6 months." I did the mental math. June 14th. Right when Robert and Vanessa were posting photos from that Miami boys' trip. Right when she'd been showing off new designer handbags and expensive dinners. "Daniel," I said carefully, "I never cleaned out joint accounts. I never threatened divorce. And that $50,000? It didn't go to medical bills." I pulled out my phone, showing him David's forensic accounting. The timeline of Robert's spending on Vanessa, the Miami trip, the jewelry, the lease on her apartment, all of it time-stamped around June 14th. Daniel's face went from confused to pale to red with fury. He spent my money on his mistress? Every penny, most likely, along with his retirement account, joint funds, fraudulent insurance reimbursements, and my actual retirement savings. His what? Confrontation number 1. I spent the next hour showing Daniel everything. The medical records proving I was the primary caregiver, the financial records showing Robert's systematic theft, the insurance fraud evidence, the timeline of his affair with Vanessa starting during treatment, the FBI investigation. Daniel's hands shook as he reviewed it all. I defended him to our parents, to our friends. I told everyone you were the problem, that you were bitter and vindictive and couldn't let him move on. That's what he needed you to believe. $50,000. Daniel's voice was hollow. I put my house at risk. My wife was hesitant, but I convinced her. It's family, I said. Rob almost died, and his wife is making his recovery hell. I feel like such an idiot. You trusted your brother. That's not idiotic. That's human. He looked up at me, eyes wet. How are you so calm? After everything he did, everything he took, how are you sitting here calmly showing me spreadsheets instead of burning his house down? I smiled slightly. Because burning his house down would give him sympathy. Showing you spreadsheets gives me an ally and destroys his credibility. One is satisfying in the moment. The other is satisfying forever. What do you need from me? Testimony. At the divorce trial, I need you to testify about what he told you, how he manipulated you, the loan he never intended to repay. Can you do that? Daniel nodded immediately. Absolutely. And Sarah? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I believed him. I should have asked your side. Should have questioned his version. You saved his life, and he's been slandering you for months while I helped. You couldn't have known. He's very good at playing the victim. Was, Daniel corrected. He was good at it. Now he's just a criminal who betrayed everyone who loved him. Small victory, number 6. We left that coffee shop with Daniel fully on my side. He'd testify. He'd provide his financial records showing the loan. He'd share every text message where Robert had lied about me. Most importantly, he'd been the one person Robert thought would always support him, and now that support was gone. Daniel called Robert that night. Elena caught it on surveillance, Robert's phone on speaker while he and Vanessa ate dinner. I know about the money, Rob. What money? The $50,000 I loaned you. I know where it went, and I know about the insurance fraud, and the affair during chemo, and everything you told me about Sarah being the problem. Silence. Then, Dan, I can explain. I met with Sarah today. Saw the evidence, all of it, and I'm done. You used me. Lied to me. Stole from me while I was trying to help you. You're not my brother anymore. You're just a thief who happens to share my DNA. You talked to Sarah? She's manipulating you. She's turning you against me. She showed me bank records, Rob, insurance claims, timelines, photographs, facts, things that don't lie unlike you. Daniel's voice was ice. I'll be testifying at your divorce trial. I'll be providing evidence to the FBI. And when you need someone to call when your life falls apart, which it's about to, don't call me. I'm done. He hung up. Robert tried calling back 17 times. Daniel blocked him. I received a text from Daniel later. Thank you for showing me the truth. I'll do whatever you need for the trial. He deserves everything that's coming. The alliance was complete. Robert's own brother, the person he thought he could manipulate indefinitely, the family tie he thought was unbreakable, had turned into one of my most powerful witnesses. Betrayal compounds. Lies metastasize. And Robert was learning that eventually you run out of people willing to believe your stories, especially when someone like me keeps very detailed, very accurate, very damning records. The court of public opinion isn't always fair, but sometimes it's exactly the justice system people deserve. And Vanessa's Instagram was about to become her own worst enemy. It started organically on November 15th. I didn't orchestrate it. I simply let the truth have oxygen. Vanessa had been posting religiously since moving in with Robert. New beginnings and cancer survivor love and choose happiness, with photos of them at restaurants, at sporting events, in their home. Her follower count had grown to about 3,400, small but engaged, mostly people who loved a love conquers all narrative. Then my friend Rachel, a social media maven who understood online dynamics better than anyone, asked an innocent question under one of Vanessa's posts from November 13th. The post showed Vanessa and Robert at a wine tasting. Caption, "So grateful for second chances and real love. Sometimes life has to break you down before it can build you up. Blessed survivor journey." Rachel's comment, question, "Weren't you his physical therapist during cancer treatment? How did you two meet? Would love to hear the full story." Simple, friendly, with just enough curiosity to make others wonder. The thread exploded. Other people started asking questions. Wait, yeah, how long were you his PT before dating? Don't therapists have rules about dating patients? This is adorable, but what happened to his wife? Didn't she take care of him through chemo? Vanessa responded defensive. Robert and I didn't start dating until after his treatment was complete. His ex-wife actually left him during his recovery. She couldn't handle him getting healthier and not needing her anymore. Some women need to be needed, you know? That's when my other friends, bless their strategic hearts, started adding context. Margaret's paralegal posing as a casual acquaintance. That's strange. I remember seeing his wife at the infusion center with him literally every single session through June. She was there for the final checkup, too. How did she leave during recovery if she was there until the end? Susan, a nurse I'd worked with at Grady Memorial. Timeline question. Saw you posting about couple dinners with Robert in April 2024. Wasn't he still receiving treatment then? I thought you said relationship started after treatment was complete. Vanessa deleted both comments, then she deleted Rachel's original question. But the internet never forgets. People had already screenshot everything. Rachel reposted the screenshots on her own Instagram story with a simple caption. Why is she deleting questions about when they started dating? What's she hiding? That opened the floodgates. People started digging through Vanessa's post history, documenting the timeline. February 2024. Vanessa posts a selfie at work, showing Robert in the background during a physical therapy session. Caption references, helping him heal. March 2024. Post about forming special connections with patients who inspire you. April 2024. First appearance of couple photos, dinner, movies, botanical gardens. Robert still visibly thin, still in treatment based on the port catheter, visible in one photo, May 2024. More couple photos, increasing intimacy. Post about finding love in unexpected places. June 2024. Post celebrating Robert being cancer-free with a couple photo, suggesting they were already together. August 2024. Moving in post about finally getting to be together without obstacles. The timeline didn't lie. Vanessa and Robert were clearly in a relationship months before his treatment ended, and her own social media proved it. My friend Jennifer, a journalist, took it further. She created a thread on X, formerly Twitter, with screenshots from Vanessa's Instagram laid out chronologically with the caption, "Thread. PT dated her cancer patient during treatment, then helped him leave his caregiver wife." Now she's rewriting history on IG. Let's talk about medical ethics, 1 in 12. The thread went viral, 47,000 likes, 12,000 retweets, comments from healthcare professionals, cancer survivors, caregivers, people sharing their own stories of medical professionals crossing boundaries, people tagging the Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board, small victory number 7. The public opinion shifted dramatically. Within 48 hours, Vanessa's Instagram was flooded with comments she couldn't delete fast enough. You started dating him in April when he was still sick? That's predatory. His wife saved his life and you helped him throw her away? That's disgusting. Hope the licensing board sees this. Patient relationships during treatment are unethical. Imagine being so morally bankrupt you target vulnerable cancer patients. He'll do to you what he did to her. Cheaters cheat. Users use. Vanessa made her account private, but people had already archived everything. The screenshots lived forever. Then came the professional consequences. Robert worked for Vitality Life Coaching, a corporate wellness company that contracted with businesses to provide health coaching, stress management programs, and holistic wellness solutions. It was perfect for a medical sales guy transitioning careers. He'd gotten the job in September, proudly posting about it on his LinkedIn. Vitality Life Coaching's entire brand was built on integrity, healthy relationships, and supporting your journey to optimal wellness. Their website featured testimonials from companies about how their coaches helped employees navigate health challenges with compassion and ethical guidance. Someone, I genuinely don't know who, sent Vitality's HR department the screenshots of Vanessa's Instagram timeline, sent the archived posts showing Robert in a relationship with his physical therapist during cancer treatment, sent the article Jennifer had written about medical ethics violations. Robert was called into a meeting on November 20th. Elena had positioned herself in the parking lot to watch. He came out 30 minutes later carrying a box. Fired. His termination letter, which Elena somehow obtained through sources I didn't ask about, was devastating. Vitality Life Coaching maintains the highest ethical standards. Recent information regarding your personal conduct, specifically engaging in a relationship with a healthcare provider during your medical treatment, and the circumstances of your divorce are inconsistent with the values and image of our company. This conduct raises questions about judgment, integrity, and respect for professional boundaries. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated for cause. Terminated for cause. No severance. No unemployment benefits. No professional reference. That evening, Vanessa and Robert had another recorded fight. It was spectacular. "You told me you had a good job," Vanessa screamed. "You told me you were making 6 figures. I was, until someone sent them lies about us. Those weren't lies. We were together in April. There are photos, Robert. Photos you encouraged me to post because you thought it made you look desirable. You're the one with the ethics violation because I dated you. My license is suspended because of you, and now you're unemployed too. How are we supposed to live? I have the house, which is half Sarah's, which she's going to take in the divorce, along with everything else because you're an idiot who committed insurance fraud." The fight devolved into accusations and blame. Who destroyed whose life? Who was the bigger problem? Who had sacrificed more? Neither mentioned the person who'd actually sacrificed everything, me. I watched the surveillance footage in my comfortable condo, sipping expensive wine I'd bought with my consulting income. Watched them destroy each other with the same viciousness they'd used to try to destroy me. The public narrative had shifted completely. Cancer survivor and his heroic new love? That story was dead. Now they were the predatory physical therapist and the ungrateful patient who'd betrayed his caregiver wife. They were the cautionary tale, the example of what not to do. People were reaching out to me with support, friends I hadn't heard from in years, former colleagues, even strangers who'd seen the story unfold online and wanted to offer encouragement. "Stay strong, Sarah. You deserve so much better. What he did is unforgivable. You're better off. Karma is real. They're getting exactly what they deserve." I didn't respond publicly, didn't comment on their posts or share my side on social media, didn't need to. The truth was doing its work without me having to say a word. Margaret texted, "The social media documentation will be useful in court. Shows pattern of deception, poor judgment, and Robert's willingness to let Vanessa malign you publicly. Judge will not be impressed." Elena added, "Robert's unemployed now, no income. Vanessa can't work. They're burning through his remaining assets. Financial pressure will make them turn on each other more. Give it another month and they'll be finished." I put my phone down and looked out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, Robert and Vanessa were probably still fighting, still blaming each other, still watching their carefully constructed life collapse in real time. And I? I had a consulting call at 8 a.m. tomorrow that would earn me a $1,200. Had a retirement account they didn't know about, had a home they'd never seen, had allies where they thought I had none. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. Now it was time for an actual court to do the same. December 4th, 2024. the day Robert's lies came home to roost in a fifth-floor conference room downtown, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a court reporter's fingers flying across her stenography machine, and my ex-husband realizing he'd severely underestimated who he was fighting. Depositions are a beautiful thing. You're under oath, every word recorded, every lie documented for the judge to review later, and Margaret Chen was about to conduct a masterclass in systematically destroying someone's credibility. Robert arrived with Chad, his increasingly nervous attorney. I was already there with Margaret, folders organized, evidence numbered, ready for war. Robert looked different, thinner. Stressed, the healthy glow from October replaced with gray exhaustion. Good. The court reporter swore him in. Margaret smiled pleasantly and began. Mr. Mitchell, when did your relationship with Vanessa Price begin? Simple question. Obvious trap. Robert glanced at Chad, who nodded. After my cancer treatment was complete, June 2024. June specifically? Yes, after I was declared cancer-free. Margaret pulled out a folder. Exhibit A. Screenshots from Vanessa's Instagram. Dated, archived, impossible to deny. Photos of them at dinner in April. At the movies in March, at his home during a physical therapy session in February where they were positioned far too close for professionalism. Mr. Mitchell, I'm showing you screenshots from Ms. Price's public Instagram account. This photo is dated April 14th, 2024. The caption reads, "Date night with my favorite cancer warrior." You were still receiving treatment in April, correct? Robert's face flushed. That was just a casual dinner. We weren't dating. The caption says, "Date night." This photo from April 28th shows you kissing. Still not dating? We were. It was complicated. I was emotionally vulnerable. So you were in a romantic relationship with your physical therapist while still her patient? It wasn't like that. Yes or no, Mr. Mitchell? Were you in a romantic relationship with Vanessa Price before June 2024? Silence. Then quietly, yes. First lie down. Margaret made a note. Let's talk about finances. You claimed in your divorce filing that Mrs. Mitchell was the one who wanted the divorce. Is that correct? Yes. She couldn't handle my recovery. Margaret pulled out Exhibit B, Robert's text messages with Vanessa, obtained through legal discovery. I'm showing you texts from your phone to Ms. Price, March 22nd, 2024. Downloaded divorce forms today. 3 more months and I can finally file. April 3rd. My lawyer says we need to wait until I'm officially cancer-free for optics. May 17th. Can't wait to be done with Sarah and start our life. These don't suggest she wanted the divorce, do they? Robert's attorney objected weakly. These are taken out of context. They're dated and time-stamped text messages, counselor. The context is clear. Mr. Mitchell, were you planning to divorce your wife while she was still providing your care? I was thinking about it. That's not the same as you downloaded divorce paperwork in March. You consulted an attorney in April. You told your mistress you couldn't wait to be done with Sarah. But you claim she wanted the divorce? She was making me miserable. By keeping you alive, Margaret's voice sharpened. By liquidating her retirement account to pay for your treatment, by sleeping in hospital chairs, by sacrificing her career, that's what made you miserable. Objection, Chad stood, argumentative. Withdrawn. Let's move to money. You cashed out your retirement account in February 2024. What was that money used for? Robert shifted uncomfortably. Medical expenses. The treatment was expensive. How much did you receive after taxes and penalties? About $79,000. Margaret pulled out David's forensic accounting. Exhibit C. Bank statements, credit card records, receipts. Mr. Mitchell, I have records showing this money went to the following: $18,000 for a BMW lease and deposit, $12,000 for Ms. Price's apartment rent, $8,400 on jewelry, $7,200 on travel to Miami, $4,300 at casinos. Should I continue? Robert's face went white. Some of it went to medical. How much? Show me one receipt for medical expenses paid from your retirement account. Silence. You can't, can you? Because it all went to funding your affair while your wife drained her retirement account, believing you were facing bankruptcy from medical bills. I was sick. I deserved to have some happiness. At her expense? Let's talk about happiness. Mrs. Mitchell withdrew $87,000 from her 401k to cover your medical treatment. You told her the out-of-pocket costs were catastrophic. Were they? Yes. The treatment was expensive. Exhibit D. Insurance explanation of benefits. Actual medical bills. Cross-reference spreadsheet. Actual out-of-pocket medical expenses. $31,400. Insurance covered the rest. Where did the other $55,600 of her retirement money go? Robert's lawyer tried to intervene. We're not prepared to address because you didn't know about it, Margaret said coldly. Your client told you Mrs. Mitchell had drained their accounts. He didn't mention he'd already drained his own retirement and substantial joint funds on his mistress, then allowed his wife to sacrifice her financial security, believing they were facing bankruptcy. She leaned forward. Mr. Mitchell, are you aware you're currently under FBI investigation for insurance fraud? Chad's head snapped toward Robert. What? That's a separate matter. Is it? Because the fraud involved inflating medical costs to justify draining marital assets seems relevant to divorce asset division. Margaret pulled out another folder. 17 fraudulent insurance claims totaling $47,300 in false reimbursements. Would you like to explain those? I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. You can do that. But understand, in civil proceedings, the judge can draw adverse inferences from that invocation. You're essentially admitting guilt. The deposition continued for 3 more brutal hours, every question a trap, every answer either a provable lie or a damaging admission. Margaret systematically dismantled Robert's claims about who wanted the divorce, where the money went, his relationship timeline with Vanessa, his lies to family and friends, his characterization of me as abusive. By the end, Robert looked destroyed. Chad looked furious with his client, and I looked calm because every word Robert had said would be read by a judge who would see him for exactly what he was, a liar, a thief, and a fraud. Small victory number 8. The legal record was now crystal clear. Robert had lied under oath, repeatedly, about major material facts. The judge would review this deposition and see someone who couldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it. But we weren't done. Vanessa's deposition was scheduled for December 11th. Vanessa arrived looking defiant, but Elena's surveillance showed her vomiting in the parking garage beforehand from nerves. Smart woman. She should have been nervous. Margaret started gently. Ms. Price, what is your current employment status? I'm between positions. You're not between positions. Your physical therapy license is suspended pending ethics investigation, correct? Yes. Why is it suspended? Someone filed a false complaint. The complaint alleges you engaged in a romantic relationship with a patient during active treatment, specifically Robert Mitchell. Is that allegation false? Vanessa glanced at her attorney, a tired-looking woman who clearly knew this was a losing battle. The relationship didn't start until after. Margaret showed her the Instagram posts, her own posts, dated, captioned, undeniable. These are from your public social media. April 14th, date night with my favorite cancer warrior. You're holding hands with Mr. Mitchell. He was your patient in April, yes? Yes, but there's no but in professional ethics, Ms. Price. You dated your patient during treatment. Yes or no? The relationship was complicated. Yes or no? Yes. Margaret continued, pulling apart every aspect of Vanessa's story. When she claimed she didn't know Robert was married at first. Screenshot of text, his wife is such a bitch, can't wait until he's free. When she claimed she never took money from Robert. Bank records showing transfers totaling $35,000. When she claimed their relationship was based on genuine connection. Her own texts, make sure you're getting the house in the divorce. I'm not living in some apartment. The coup de grace came near the end. Ms. Price, you billed insurance for 73 physical therapy sessions with Mr. Mitchell between February and July 2024, correct? Yes, that's my job. 15 of those sessions occurred on dates when Mr. Mitchell was receiving chemotherapy at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. How did you provide physical therapy at his home when he was physically at the hospital? Vanessa froze. There must be a mistake in the dates. Hospital logs versus your billing records. No mistake. You billed for services never rendered. That's insurance fraud, Ms. Price. Her attorney jumped in. My client invokes her Fifth Amendment right. Noted. But in civil proceedings, that allows adverse inferences. Just so we're clear, Ms. Price is invoking her right against self-incrimination regarding insurance fraud allegations. The deposition ended with Vanessa visibly shaking, her attorney pulling her aside for an urgent, whispered conversation. Elena captured them in the hallway afterward. You didn't tell me about the false billing. It was just a few dates. It's fraud, federal fraud, and it's all documented. Robert said it would be fine. Robert is being investigated by the FBI. Nothing about this is fine. Small victory number 9, extension. Both depositions complete. Both defendants caught in multiple lies, both their stories falling apart under basic questioning. Both now facing the reality that their lies had created an unassailable legal record of their betrayal. Margaret and I left the building, winter wind cutting across downtown Chicago. She was practically glowing. That's the most comprehensive deposition destruction I've done in 15 years of practice, she said. The judge is going to read those transcripts and eviscerate them at trial. When's the trial? February 7th. But Sarah? I don't think it'll make it to trial. Once Robert's attorney reviews what happened today and explains to him how badly this is going to go, they'll settle. I don't want a settlement. What do you want? I thought about 18 months of sacrifice. Thought about Robert handing me divorce papers in my garage. Thought about Vanessa's smirk. Thought about every lie, every theft, every betrayal. I want total victory. I want the judge to read every word of those depositions. I want a courtroom full of people to hear what they did. I want a legal judgment that says exactly who the villains are in this story. Margaret smiled. Then we go to trial. And we destroy them completely. The second mediation session was scheduled for December 18th. Standard procedure. Give parties one more chance to settle before trial. But Margaret and I had a different agenda. We were going to enjoy watching Robert realize he'd miscalculated everything. We arrived early, setting up in the same beige conference room where Robert had been so smug back in September. Margaret arranged documents in neat stacks, David's forensic accounting, my asset disclosures, the depositions transcripts, everything organized like ammunition. Robert and Chad arrived looking worn down. Robert had lost more weight. Stress and unemployment suited him poorly. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. The mediator, a different woman this time, Judge Ellen Kaufman, retired, opened the session. Let's try to find common ground. Mr. Mitchell, your position? Chad cleared his throat. Mr. Mitchell is seeking a 50-50 split of marital assets. He's willing to forego spousal support if Mrs. Mitchell agrees to an expedited settlement. He'd like to retain the house and is willing to compensate Mrs. Mitchell for her half of the equity. Generous, I said flatly. Mrs. Mitchell's position? Judge Kaufman asked. Margaret smiled. Mrs. Mitchell is seeking the following: 75% of marital assets, full reimbursement of the $87,000 she spent from her retirement account on Mr. Mitchell's medical treatment, restitution for Mr. Mitchell's dissipation of marital assets totaling $47,150, and her attorney fees. Additionally, she's seeking confirmation that certain assets she acquired during the marriage are separate property and not subject to division. Robert's head snapped up. What assets? You don't have assets. You told me you were staying with a friend because you couldn't afford rent. I lied, I said pleasantly, much like you've been lying for the past year, except my lies didn't hurt anyone. Margaret pulled out the first set of documents. Mrs. Mitchell never actually quit her position at Grayson Pharmaceuticals. She negotiated a remote consulting arrangement at $150 per hour. Over the 18 months she was caregiving, she earned $240,000 that Mr. Mitchell knew nothing about. The color drained from Robert's face. What? That income was deposited into a separate account established before marriage, making it separate property under Illinois law. Additionally, Mrs. Mitchell used that income to purchase a condominium in Lincoln Park, held through an LLC. Current value, $380,000. That's also separate property. You've had money this whole time? Robert's voice rose. You let me think you were broke. You acted desperate and helpless. I acted smart, I corrected. You wanted a divorce. You thought you were leaving me destitute. Turns out I'm doing quite well. Better than you, certainly, Margaret continued, pulling out more documents. Mrs. Mitchell also has investment accounts totaling $112,000, combined with her condo, her consulting income, and her cash reserves. Her separate property totals approximately $740,000. The silence was deafening. Robert stared at me like I was a stranger. How did I manage to work full-time, be your caregiver, and hide substantial income? Because I'm very good at my job. Because I'm smarter than you gave me credit for. Because while you were planning my destruction, I was planning my survival. Chad was frantically making notes, his earlier confidence completely shattered. This changes the asset division significantly. It doesn't change it at all, Margaret said, because these are separate assets, acquired through separate income, held in separate accounts. They're not subject to marital division, but the marital assets, those are very much in play. She pulled out David's forensic accounting masterpiece. The marital home, current value $485,000. Mortgage balance $178,000. Equity $307,000. Joint checking and savings $1,400 remaining after Mr. Mitchell's dissipation of $47,850. Mr. Mitchell's current retirement account $0 and a liquidated for non-marital purposes. Mrs. Mitchell's retirement account $0. Liquidated for marital medical expenses. However, Margaret continued, Mr. Mitchell's dissipation of $47,850 in marital assets on his extramarital affair is subject to reimbursement under Illinois law. The $87,000 Mrs. Mitchell spent from her retirement account on Mr. Mitchell's medical treatment he fraudulently claimed cost more than it did, is also subject to reimbursement. Chad tried to object. We're not acknowledging any fraud. Your client admitted under oath in his deposition that he used retirement funds for non-medical expenses while allowing his wife to believe they faced bankruptcy. That's fraud by any definition. But if you'd like to argue it in front of a judge, we welcome that opportunity. Confrontation number 2. Robert leaned forward, face red. You set me up. This whole time you were setting me up. No, I said calmly. I documented. There's a difference. You set yourself up by lying, stealing, and betraying everyone who cared about you. I just made sure there was evidence when it all fell apart. You hid money from me. I protected my income from your theft. Given what you did with every dollar you could access, I'd say that was smart financial planning. The judge won't let you keep everything. The judge will let me keep my separate property, because that's the law, and the judge will award me the majority of marital property because you dissipated assets, committed fraud, and behaved unconscionably. Would you like Margaret to explain the legal precedents? She has about 40 cases where asset dissipation led to 75 to 80% awards to the innocent spouse. Judge Kaufman interjected. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you're angry, but let's focus on resolution. I don't want resolution, I said. I want justice. I want a judge to review those depositions where Robert lied repeatedly. I want a courtroom to hear about him stealing from me, from his brother, from insurance companies. I want a legal record that says exactly who did what to whom. You're vindictive, Robert started. I'm meticulous. There's a difference. Margaret pulled out the final document. Mrs. Mitchell's settlement offer. She receives the house after buying out Mr. Mitchell's equity at current market value, minus restitution for dissipated assets. She receives full reimbursement of her $87,000 retirement expenditure. Mr. Mitchell receives whatever remains of joint accounts after attorney fees. All separate property remains separate. She slid the paper across. That leaves Mr. Mitchell with approximately $18,000 and no house. He can accept this settlement, or we can go to trial where the outcome will likely be worse for him once the judge hears about the FBI investigation, the ethics violations enabling his affair, and his brother's testimony about the $50,000 fraud. Robert looked at the numbers, looked at Chad, looked at me. This is ridiculous. A judge won't agree to this. Every family court attorney in Illinois would agree to it, Margaret said. Your client dissipated nearly $50,000 in marital assets on an affair. He committed insurance fraud. He lied in deposition. He's under federal investigation. Mrs. Mitchell, meanwhile, worked throughout the caregiving period, maintained her income stream, and documented everything. The judge will love her and despise him. Small victory, Chapter 9 complete. The power dynamic had reversed entirely. Robert, who'd walked into our first mediation demanding spousal support and acting like he held all the cards, now sat broken and furious, realizing I'd held better cards all along and had simply waited for the perfect moment to play them. I need to consult with my client, Chad said weakly. Take all the time you need, Margaret replied. But understand, this offer expires when we leave this room. At trial, we'll ask for attorney fees, damages for emotional distress, and punitive sanctions for asset dissipation. This settlement is Mr. Mitchell's best possible outcome. They stepped out. Through the conference room windows, I watched Robert pace the hallway, gesturing angrily while Chad tried to calm him down. 20 minutes later, they returned. We need more time to consider, Chad began. No, Margaret said. Sign now, or we'll see you in February. Robert's hands were shaking. He looked at me with something between hatred and disbelief. I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you thought I wouldn't, I replied. You really didn't know who you were married to, did you? You saw a caregiver, a nurse, someone to use and discard. You didn't see the pharmaceutical executive who spends her days navigating complex regulations and documenting everything for FDA review. You didn't see the strategist, the planner, the woman who learned to survive and build power in a male-dominated industry. You're a cold, calculating bitch. I'm a woman you betrayed who refused to be destroyed by it. Call that whatever makes you feel better. They didn't sign. Robert stormed out, Chad trailing behind with an apologetic look at Judge Kaufman. Margaret and I packed up our documents calmly. He'll try to negotiate before trial, Margaret said. They always do when they realize how badly they've lost. Let him try, I said. I want my day in court. That evening, Elena sent me surveillance footage, Robert and Vanessa fighting in their car outside the mediation building. She has money? She's had money this whole time? I didn't know. You said she was broken. You said she'd be easy to steamroll. Now she's taking everything and I can't even work because of that fucking ethics investigation. It's not my fault. It's entirely your fault. You told me to post those pictures. You said showing off our relationship would make her look petty. Now those posts are evidence of our affair timing and ethics violations. You're the one who dated me during my treatment because you pursued me. And now we're both fucked and she's walking away with hundreds of thousands while we have nothing. The fight escalated, blame flying back and forth. Their relationship, built on betrayal and stolen money, was collapsing under the weight of consequences. I turned off the video, poured myself wine, looked around my beautiful condo that Robert had never seen, bought with money he'd never known about, in a life I'd built while he thought he was destroying me. Small victory number 9 complete. The financial revelation had done more than shift the legal dynamics. It had shattered Robert's entire understanding of the situation. He'd thought he was the powerful one, the survivor, the person who'd won. He'd been wrong. So completely, utterly wrong. And the best part? We hadn't even gotten to trial yet. The Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board hearing was scheduled for January 8, 2025. I had no official reason to attend. I wasn't the complainant, wasn't a witness, wasn't even mentioned by name in the official complaint. But the hearing was public record, open to anyone who wanted to observe. So I went. Elena came with me for moral support and surveillance purposes. We sat in the back row of a small hearing room in a government building on West Jefferson Street, watching Vanessa's professional life unravel in real time. The hearing board consisted of 5 members, 3 physical therapists, 1 public member, and 1 attorney. They sat behind a raised panel, reviewing documents while Vanessa and her attorney sat at a table, looking progressively more panicked. The board chair, a stern woman named Dr. Patricia Osei, began, "Ms. Price, you're here regarding complaint number 2024-3847, alleging multiple violations of professional conduct standards, specifically engaging in a romantic relationship with a patient during active treatment, falsifying treatment documentation, and fraudulent billing practices. How do you plead?" Vanessa's attorney stood. "My client acknowledges certain boundary issues but disputes the characterization. How do you plead?" Dr. Osei repeated. "Not guilty to all charges," Vanessa said, voice shaking. "Very well, let's review the evidence." What followed was 2 hours of systematic destruction. The board presented Exhibit A, timeline of Vanessa's social media posts showing her relationship with Robert beginning in February 2024, while he was still her patient receiving treatment through June. 15 separate posts documented and dated. Exhibit B, text messages between Vanessa and Robert discussing their relationship, his medical condition, and their plans for the future. Messages clearly showing she was aware he was married and in active treatment. Exhibit C, testimony from 3 former patients, alleging inappropriate conduct. Gerald Morrison described Vanessa asking for money. Patricia Chen described unwanted physical contact beyond therapeutic necessity. David Huang described Vanessa discussing her personal relationship problems during sessions and asking for advice. Exhibit D, billing records showing 73 sessions billed to Robert's insurance, 15 of which occurred on dates when hospital records proved he was physically at the infusion center receiving chemotherapy. Vanessa tried to defend herself. The social media posts were taken out of context. Robert and I were just friends initially. The caption, "Date Night with my favorite cancer warrior," suggests more than friendship, the attorney board member noted dryly. The timing was complicated. "I didn't mean to violate boundaries. You pursued a romantic relationship with a vulnerable patient undergoing cancer treatment," Dr. Osei said. "A patient who was emotionally fragile, grateful for care, and easily influenced. That's predatory behavior, Ms. Price. I loved him." That's not relevant to professional ethics. You could love him after he was no longer your patient. You could love him after appropriate time had passed. You couldn't love him while being paid to provide his therapeutic care. The billing fraud was even more damning. Vanessa's attorney tried to argue clerical errors and miscommunication with billing department. But the board had documentation showing Vanessa had personally submitted the claims, had personally coded the higher complexity charges, had personally selected the dates, including those when Robert was provably elsewhere. "Ms. Price," one of the therapist board members said, "in 20 years of practice, I've never accidentally billed for a session when my patient was in a hospital receiving chemotherapy. These aren't errors. They're fraud." After 2 hours of evidence, the board recessed to deliberate. 30 minutes later, they returned. Dr. Osei read the decision. The Illinois Physical Therapy Licensing Board finds Vanessa Price guilty of violating professional conduct standards, specifically engaging in inappropriate patient relationships, falsifying documentation, and fraudulent billing practices. Ms. Price's license is hereby permanently revoked. She is prohibited from practicing physical therapy in Illinois or applying for licensure in any state. Additionally, this matter is being referred to the Illinois Attorney General's office for potential criminal prosecution of the fraudulent billing. Vanessa burst into tears. Her attorney tried to argue for reconsideration, for a suspension instead of revocation. The board was unmoved. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, Dr. Osei said. This was a pattern of predatory behavior toward vulnerable patients, followed by systematic fraud to cover your actions and maximize profit. You betrayed the trust patients place in healthcare providers. You don't deserve to practice. Elena and I left before Vanessa saw us. In the parking lot, Elena was grinning. License permanently revoked, referred for criminal prosecution. That's complete professional annihilation. She did it to herself, I said. I just made sure the evidence got to the right people. Small victory, Narration. By that evening, Vanessa's professional life was over. She couldn't practice physical therapy anywhere in the United States. License revocations in one state typically led to denials in all others. Her career, which had required years of education and training, was finished at age 27. More importantly, she had no income, no prospects, no way to support herself. That meant she was now entirely dependent on Robert, unemployed under FBI investigation, facing a divorce trial that would leave him with almost nothing. Two people drowning, clinging to each other, pulling each other under. The surveillance footage from that night was fascinating. Robert picked Vanessa up from the hearing, and she got into the car sobbing. The fight started before they'd even left the parking lot. They took my license permanently. I can't work. I know, I'm sorry. You're sorry? This is your fault. If I hadn't dated you, if I hadn't needed money so I inflated some billing codes, none of this would have happened. You chose to commit fraud for you, to help support us, because you kept saying we'd be rich after the divorce, that Sarah would pay, that we'd have everything. Instead, she has everything and we're both fucked. We'll figure it out. How, Robert? How will we figure it out? You're unemployed. I'm unemployable. We're living in a house you're about to lose. We have maybe 4 months of savings if we're lucky. Your FBI investigation could lead to prison. How exactly are we going to figure it out? The fight continued for an hour. Accusations flying. Who ruined whose life? Who lied to whom? Who was the bigger mistake? I should have stayed away from you, Vanessa screamed at one point. You were just another patient. I could have helped you recover and moved on. But you pursued me, told me your marriage was over, told me your wife was horrible, told me we'd have this great life. I believed we would. You believed your wife was helpless. You believed you could steal from her and the insurance company and no one would notice. You're not smart, Robert. You're just arrogant. And I was stupid enough to believe you. Elena sent me the recording with a note. The alliance is crumbling. Give it 2 weeks. She was optimistic. It took 1 week. January 15th, Vanessa moved out. Elena captured her loading her BMW, probably 2 months from repossession at this point, with suitcases and boxes. Robert stood in the driveway looking defeated, trying to convince her to stay. We can get through this together. Together? You got me disbarred from my profession. You're under federal investigation. You're about to lose everything in your divorce. What exactly are we going through together except mutual destruction? Vanessa, please. Find someone else to drag down with you. I'm done. She drove away, didn't look back. Robert stood alone in the driveway of the house he was about to lose, with no job, no money, no girlfriend, no future. Stood there for 20 minutes just staring at nothing. Eventually, he went inside, alone. Small victory 10 complete. The villains had turned on each other. Vanessa's fall had been absolute, professional, financial, personal, and in falling, she'd abandoned Robert to face his consequences solo. No more Instagram posts about non-cancer survivor love. No more see your new beginnings. Just a deleted social media presence, a revoked professional license, and a young woman learning the hard way that betraying people for money and excitement comes with a cost. I felt no sympathy. She'd helped Robert betray me, had smirked while delivering divorce papers, had posted gleefully about saving him from his depressing marriage, had benefited financially from money stolen from me. Now she had nothing, would have nothing, would spend years rebuilding a life and career she'd destroyed for a man who'd destroyed her in return. Karma isn't mystical. Sometimes it's just the natural consequence of documented bad behavior, catching up with people who thought they were too clever to face accountability. January 23, 2025. Robert had a routine follow-up scan. 18 months post-remission, completely standard. I only knew about it because Elena mentioned he'd gone to Northwestern Memorial that morning. I didn't think much of it. Went about my day, consulting call with a client, lunch with Margaret to discuss final trial preparations, grocery shopping. Normal life. The life I'd built while Robert and Vanessa's world burned. Then my phone rang at 6:47 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Sarah, Robert's voice breaking, crying. Sarah, please don't hang up. I should have hung up, would have been justified, but curiosity, or maybe something darker, made me listen. What do you want, Robert? The scan. He was sobbing. Actually, sobbing. The cancer's back, stage 3 this time. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, same as before, but it spread faster. Dr. Okonkwo says... She says treatment is possible, but not guaranteed. Maybe 50-50 odds this time. I felt nothing. That's what struck me most. The complete absence of sympathy. The woman who'd spent 18 months fighting to keep him alive felt nothing but cold detachment. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, voice flat. Sarah, I need you. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I know that now. Vanessa's gone. Daniel won't speak to me. I have no one. But you know how to do this. You saved me once. Please, please help me again. The audacity was breathtaking, the sheer, unmitigated audacity. Help you, I repeated slowly. You want me to help you. I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did was unforgivable, but you're the only person who knows how to navigate this. The treatments, the medications, the appointments. I can't do this alone, Sarah. I'm terrified. You should be. Please, call Vanessa, I said, each word ice cold. I'm sure she'll be happy to help. She made you feel so alive, remember? She wasn't depressing like me. She didn't remind you of being sick. Call your young, exciting girlfriend and ask her to hold your hand through chemo. She left. When the license thing happened, when everything fell apart, she left. Shocking. It's almost like relationships built on betrayal and stolen money aren't very stable. Who could have predicted that? Sarah, I'm begging. Beg all you want. I'm not your wife anymore. I'm not your caregiver. I'm not your salvation. I'm the woman whose life you tried to destroy, the moment you didn't need me anymore. Remember? You said I was exhausting, depressing, that I reminded you of being sick. Well, congratulations, Robert. Now you get to be sick without the depressing reminder of someone who actually loved you. I still love you. No, you love what I can do for you. You love having a competent caregiver who'll sacrifice everything. You don't love me. You never did. You loved being taken care of, and you mistook that for a marriage. Please. He was fully crying now. I don't know what to do. Dr. Okonkwo wants to start treatment next week. I can't go through this alone. I don't have the strength. Then die. The words came out before I could stop them. Harsh, cruel, unforgivable. What? You heard me. If you don't have the strength to fight for your own life, then don't. Die. I don't care anymore. You made your choices. You threw me away. You have the audacity to call me now? To ask me to sacrifice myself again for someone who showed me exactly how little I mattered the moment you could function without me? No. No, Robert. Face your mortality alone. Experience the terror without someone holding your hand. Feel what it's like to be abandoned during the worst moment of your life. That's what you did to me after I gave you everything." Silence on the line. Then quietly, "I deserve that. You deserve worse. Sarah, I want you to know I'm sorry for all of it. I was wrong. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed something beautiful because I was too narcissistic to appreciate what I had." Your apology means nothing. It changes nothing. It doesn't undo 18 months of sacrifice you repaid with betrayal. It doesn't return my retirement account or my stolen time or the pieces of myself I gave up to keep you alive. Your sorry is worthless. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. You can't unfuck Vanessa. You can't unspend my money. You can't uncommit insurance fraud. You can't unbreak my trust. You're simply going to have to live with what you did, or in your case, maybe die with it. I hung up, sat on my couch, staring at my phone, hands shaking, not from guilt, from rage, the unmitigated audacity of him calling me, asking me to save him again after everything. My phone buzzed. Text from Robert. "I understand if you can't help, but I need you to know I do love you. I always did. I just didn't realize how much until it was too late. I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive me." I deleted it without responding. Elena called 5 minutes later. "Robert just left you a voicemail. Want me to send you the recording?" "No, I don't want to hear his voice again." Understood. For what it's worth, the surveillance shows he's been trying to call Vanessa. She's blocked him. His brother blocked him. His parents, I checked, are in Florida and haven't responded to his messages. He literally has no one. Good. Small victory, Thamar 11. Natural consequences, delivered by karma or cosmic justice or simple cause and effect. Robert had cancer again. The same cancer I'd saved him from, returning because biology doesn't care about morality. And this time, he'd face it alone. No devoted wife sleeping in hospital chairs, no one managing medications, no one holding his hand through terror, no one sacrificing retirement accounts to pay for treatment. Just Robert, alone with his consequences, facing mortality without the safety net of unconditional love he'd thrown away. Part of me, a very small part, felt guilty. I'm not a monster. I'm a nurse who spent 40 years caring for people. The idea of anyone facing cancer alone triggered my professional instincts. But the larger part? The part that remembered him handing me divorce papers while I unpacked medical supplies? The part that saw my drained retirement account and his BMW lease for Vanessa? The part that documented 18 months of sacrifice repaid with cruelty? That part felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I sent one text back, just one. "You're right. You deserve happiness. After everything you went through, after facing mortality, after surviving against the odds. You absolutely deserve to be happy. You'll have plenty of time to find that happiness during your chemo treatments. Alone. Good luck, Robert. You're going to need it." I blocked his number, blocked his email, blocked every possible avenue of communication. Then I poured myself wine, made dinner, and called my friend Rachel to make plans for the weekend. Life moved forward. Robert's second cancer fight wasn't my concern. His terror wasn't my problem. His mortality wasn't my responsibility. I'd already saved him once. He'd repaid that salvation with betrayal. Some lessons you only learn when you're abandoned at your lowest point. Robert was about to get that education. February 7th, 2025. Cook County Circuit Court, Division 13, the Honorable Margaret Sullivan presiding. The day justice would finally have its say. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m., 45 minutes early. Margaret met me in the hallway, immaculate in a charcoal suit, carrying 3 briefcases full of evidence. We'd prepared for this moment for months. Every document organized, every witness prepped, every argument rehearsed. "Ready?" she asked. "I've been ready since August." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches, fluorescent lighting, the Illinois state seal behind the judge's bench. But it felt significant, sacred even. This was where truth would be documented, where lies would be exposed, where my 18 months of sacrifice would finally be validated by someone with the power to make Robert pay. Robert arrived at 8:55, 5 minutes before the hearing was scheduled to start. He looked terrible. The cancer was back. And the treatment was clearly taking its toll again. He'd lost weight. His skin had that gray pallor I remembered from before, and he moved slowly, carefully, like every step hurt. Part of me, that nurse part that never fully dies, registered his suffering with clinical detachment. Stage 3 lymphoma, probably on a different chemo protocol than before since the cancer had developed resistance, maybe 6 months into treatment based on his appearance. The larger part of me felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Chad sat beside him, looking like he knew this was a losing battle. No swagger, no confidence, just a young attorney who'd tied himself to a sinking ship and was going down with it. Judge Sullivan entered at 9 a.m. exactly. She was 62, according to Margaret's research, with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and particular contempt for liars. Perfect. "We're here for Mitchell v. Mitchell," she said, reviewing her notes. "Dissolution of marriage. Mrs. Mitchell is represented by Margaret Chen, Mr. Mitchell by Chad Forrester. Before we begin, I've reviewed the depositions, both of them, thoroughly." She looked at Robert with an expression that could freeze vodka. "Mr. Mitchell, I want you to know that I'm aware you lied under oath multiple times in your deposition. I'm aware of the FBI investigation into your insurance fraud, and I'm aware of the circumstances under which this marriage ended. My rulings will reflect that awareness. Are we clear?" Robert nodded weakly. Chad looked like he wanted to disappear. "Mrs. Chen, present your case." What followed was 2 hours of systematic evidence presentation. Margaret was surgical, methodical, devastating. The medical records, every hospital admission, every treatment, photos of me at Robert's bedside, provided by nurses who remembered me, who remembered how I'd never left his side, documentation of my role as primary caregiver, medical decision-maker, constant presence. "Your Honor," Margaret said, "Mrs. Mitchell attended all 93 chemotherapy sessions over 18 months. She slept in hospital chairs during his infections. She administered home medications. She managed his care completely while supposedly not working and having no income." The financial evidence. David Torres took the stand as expert witness, presented the forensic accounting, every fraudulent insurance claim, every dollar Robert spent on Vanessa, every theft from joint accounts. Mr. Mitchell dissipated $47,850 in marital assets on his extramarital affair, David testified. He liquidated his $120,000 retirement account for non-marital purposes while allowing his wife to liquidate her $87,000 retirement account, believing they faced bankruptcy from medical costs. The actual out-of-pocket medical expenses were $31,400. The remaining $55,600 of Mrs. Mitchell's retirement money went to cover living expenses, while Mr. Mitchell spent equivalent amounts on his mistress. Judge Sullivan's expression grew progressively darker. The timeline evidence. Margaret presented the Instagram posts, text messages, hotel receipts, showed exactly when Robert's affair began, February 2024, during treatment. Showed his divorce planning starting in March. Showed him spending money on Vanessa in April, May, June, while I was still caregiving. While Mrs. Mitchell was sleeping 3 hours a night keeping him alive, Margaret said, Mr. Mitchell was planning her destruction and funding his affair with her money. Daniel's testimony. This was the kill shot. Robert's brother took the stand, and I watched Robert's face crumble. Robert told me Sarah was abusive, Daniel testified, voice steady. Said she was controlling, that she was holding his cancer over his head, that she wanted the divorce, but wanted him to look like the bad guy. He convinced me to refinance my house to loan him $50,000. said it was for medical bills Sarah had refused to cover, said he'd pay me back within 6 months. Did he pay you back? Margaret asked. No, and I later discovered that money went to his girlfriend. He spent my $50,000, money I borrowed against my home, on jewelry, trips, and an apartment deposit for his mistress while telling me it was for medical expenses. Confrontation number 3. Judge Sullivan ordered Robert to take the stand. Chad objected weakly but was overruled. Mr. Mitchell, the judge said, I want to hear directly from you. When did you decide to divorce your wife? Robert's voice was barely audible. June 2024. That's not what your text messages show. You downloaded divorce paperwork in March. You consulted attorneys in April. You told Ms. Price you were planning to leave your wife while she was still providing your daily care. Is that accurate? Silence. Then, yes. And the insurance fraud? The FBI is investigating 17 false claims totaling over $47,000. Did you submit fraudulent insurance claims? I invoke my Fifth Amendment right. This is a civil proceeding, Mr. Mitchell. Your invocation will be held against you. Did you defraud your insurance company? Long pause. Finally, yes. The courtroom was silent. Even Chad looked stunned that Robert had admitted it. Then came my turn. Victim impact statement. Margaret had suggested keeping it short, powerful, focused. I stood, looked directly at Robert, and spoke. I gave you 18 months of my life. I slept in hospital chairs until my back permanently damaged my spine. I held your hand through every single treatment while you vomited and cried and begged me not to leave you. I emptied our retirement, my entire financial security, to save you with experimental treatments your insurance wouldn't cover. I sacrificed my sleep, my health, my career, my dignity. I turned myself into a ghost to keep you alive. Robert was crying. I didn't care. And the moment you could breathe without my help, the moment you didn't need me to survive anymore, you discarded me like medical waste. You handed me divorce papers while I was unpacking the last supplies from your treatment. You moved your mistress into our home within a week. You stole from me, lied about me, slandered me to everyone who'd listen. You let me believe we were bankrupt while you spent $50,000 on a woman half your age. But you taught me something valuable, Robert. You taught me that sometimes the person you save becomes the monster you need protection from. You taught me that sacrifice without respect is just exploitation. You taught me to document everything, protect myself, and never again confuse caregiving with love. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I want justice. I want legal acknowledgement of what happened. I want my retirement money back. I want this man to face consequences for once in his life. And I want to move forward knowing the system worked, that truth mattered, that I didn't sacrifice 18 months for nothing. I sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Sullivan removed her glasses, looked at Robert with something approaching disgust. Mr. Mitchell, in 30 years on this bench, I've seen a lot of cruelty, domestic violence, child abuse, financial manipulation, but I've rarely seen such callous, calculated betrayal as what you've done to this woman. She saved your life. You repaid her by planning her destruction while she was still administering your medications. She put her glasses back on, reviewed her notes. This divorce is granted with extreme prejudice. Marital asset division. Mrs. Mitchell receives 75%. Mr. Mitchell receives 25%. The marital home, equity value $307,000, goes to Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell's share is approximately $76,750. From that amount, he will repay Mrs. Mitchell's $87,000 retirement expenditure. Chad stood. Your Honor, that leaves my client with negative funds. I'm aware. Mr. Mitchell will owe Mrs. Mitchell $10,250 plus $30,000 in penalties for asset dissipation and fraudulent conduct. Total restitution, $40,250. Additionally, he will pay Mrs. Mitchell's attorney fees. which I'm estimating at approximately $45,000. If he cannot pay immediately, wages will be garnished. If he has no wages due to unemployment, assets will be seized. Your Honor, my client has cancer. He's undergoing treatment. He can't work. He should have considered that before committing fraud and betraying his caregiver wife. This court has no sympathy for Mr. Mitchell's current circumstances, which are entirely of his own making. She signed the order. Divorce granted. Additionally, Mrs. Mitchell's request for a restraining order is granted. Mr. Mitchell is to have no contact with Mrs. Mitchell for a period of 3 years. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. She looked at Robert one final time. You're very ill, Mr. Mitchell. You're facing the same mortality you faced before. But this time, you'll face it without the woman who sacrificed everything to save you. I hope that knowledge keeps you company through your treatments. Court is adjourned. She stood. Everyone rose, and just like that, it was over. Margaret and I walked out of that courtroom victorious. Behind us, Robert sat hunched over, crying, facing consequences that would follow him through whatever remained of his life. You won, Margaret said in the hallway. Completely, utterly, total victory. I know, I said, and smiled. 6 months later, August 2025, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and rose. My phone buzzed with a news alert, and I opened it out of habit. Local man sentenced in insurance fraud case, 18 months federal prison. I clicked. The article was brief but satisfying. Robert Mitchell, 55, of Naperville, pleaded guilty to 17 counts of healthcare fraud totaling $47,300 in false insurance claims. Mitchell admitted to submitting fraudulent claims during his cancer treatment in 2023-2024, inflating costs and billing for services never received. U.S. District Judge Patricia Hammond sentenced Mitchell to 18 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and ordered full restitution to the insurance company plus penalties. Mitchell is currently undergoing treatment for recurrent lymphoma and will serve his sentence after completing therapy at a federal medical facility. 18 months, the exact length of time I'd spent saving his life. Poetic. Elena had been keeping me updated through her network. Robert had declared bankruptcy in April. The house, my house now legally, had been transferred to my name. His remaining assets were seized to pay my restitution judgment, though he'd never fully cover the $85,250 he owed me. He was receiving cancer treatment at a county hospital now. No private rooms, no experimental therapies, just basic care covered by emergency Medicaid after his insurance lapsed. From what Elena's sources reported, he was about 4 months into his second round of chemo. Prognosis uncertain. No one visiting him except court-appointed social workers ensuring he survived long enough to serve his prison sentence. Vanessa had fared marginally better, though better was relative. Her license was permanently revoked, making her unemployable in healthcare. She was working 3 part-time retail jobs, Target, Starbucks, and some boutique in Lincoln Park, living with 2 roommates in a studio apartment in a sketchy part of town. Her BMW had been repossessed in March. Elena sent me a photo once of Vanessa at Target wearing the red vest, scanning items at checkout. The caption, "From dating a cancer patient for his money to working minimum wage. Full circle." I didn't feel joy at her downfall exactly, just satisfaction that actions had consequences, that betraying people came with costs, that you can't build a life on stolen money and expect it to stand. Daniel had become an unexpected friend. We met for coffee monthly. He'd divorced himself from Robert completely, but felt compelled to maintain some connection to the family he'd thought he knew. I'm starting a nonprofit, I told him over coffee in June. Caregiver advocacy, resources for people who sacrifice everything for sick family members, legal protection information, financial planning, support groups. What are you calling it? The Second Chances Caregiver Fund. Helping caregivers who've been exploited or betrayed rebuild their lives. I want to help, Daniel said immediately. Let me sit on the board or fundraise, something. I need to make amends. You didn't do anything wrong. I believed him. I gave him money that went to his mistress. I defended him. That's something. Let me help fix it. So Daniel became my first board member. We held our inaugural fundraiser in July, raised $47,000, ironically the exact amount Robert had stolen from me. The money would fund legal consultations for caregivers facing exploitation, therapy for those dealing with post-caregiving trauma, and emergency financial assistance for those who depleted resources, saving ungrateful family members. My career had exploded. Grayson Pharmaceuticals offered me a full-time executive position again, VP of Regulatory Strategy, $225,000 base plus bonuses. I accepted, this time with clear boundaries and the knowledge that my worth wasn't tied to sacrificing myself. I'd gained back the weight I'd lost. My hair was professionally colored now, the gray covered with rich chestnut highlights. The arthritis in my hands had improved with proper treatment and reduced stress. I looked, according to my friends, 10 years younger than I had a year ago. Healthy, vibrant, alive, and I was dating. His name was Michael Chen, no relation to Margaret, just unfortunate coincidence in surnames. He was a professor of bioethics at Northwestern 56, divorced himself after his ex-wife had an affair. We'd met at a pharmaceutical ethics conference where I was speaking about caregiver exploitation in medical contexts. "Your story is remarkable," he'd said afterward. "The strength it took to document everything, to fight back legally rather than emotionally. That's extraordinary." 3 months in, our relationship was careful, boundaried, healthy. He treated me like an equal, like someone whose time was valuable, like someone who deserved consideration and respect. When I told him about Robert, about the 18 months of caregiving and the betrayal, he'd listened and then said simply, "He was a fool. Anyone who had you and threw you away is profoundly stupid." It felt revolutionary to be valued. I'd been asked to speak at 3 conferences about caregiver abuse, how to recognize it, how to protect yourself, how to document and seek legal recourse. The pharmaceutical industry took notice. My story became a cautionary tale in medical ethics courses. The Mitchell case was now taught as an example of caregiver exploitation and the importance of legal protections. My consulting business was thriving. I'd taken on 10 clients, billing $200 an hour now, my reputation enhanced by the publicity around the case. Turns out people wanted to hire someone meticulous enough to document 18 months of fraud while simultaneously saving someone's life. On August 15th, exactly 1 year after Robert had handed me divorce papers in the garage, I hosted a dinner party at my condo. Margaret and her husband, Elena and her girlfriend, Daniel and his wife, Michael, my friends, Rachel and Susan, people who'd supported me, fought for me, believed me. We toasted to survival, to documentation, to the power of keeping receipts, to justice that comes slowly but completely, to second chances and new beginnings built on truth rather than betrayal. "What's the best revenge?" Rachel asked, wine-tipsy and philosophical. "Living well," I said, "having everything they thought they'd taken from you, thriving in ways they'll never understand or achieve." Michael squeezed my hand under the table, "and finding happiness they can't touch or diminish." That night, after everyone left, I stood on my balcony watching the city lights. Thought about where I'd been a year ago, broken, exhausted, being handed divorce papers after 18 months of sacrifice. Thought about where I was now, healthy, successful, surrounded by people who valued me, in a relationship built on mutual respect. Robert was in a county hospital bed somewhere, alone, facing mortality with no one holding his hand. Vanessa was working 3 retail jobs to survive, her career destroyed by her own ethical violations. And I was here, victorious, transformed, free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be destroyed. It's documenting everything. It's using the system. It's protecting yourself with such meticulous care that when the betrayers finally realize what they've done, you're already so far beyond them they can never reach you again. I raised my wine glass to the Chicago skyline, to survival, to justice, to the woman I'd become through fire. The letter arrived on September 3rd, forwarded through Margaret's office since Robert was legally prohibited from contacting me directly. She called before sending it. Robert sent something. Return address is the federal medical facility. Want me to screen it? Send it. I'm curious what he thinks he can possibly say. It arrived 2 days later. Plain envelope. Robert's handwriting. Shakier than I remembered. I made coffee, sat on my balcony, and opened it. Dear Sarah, I'm writing this from the hospital. Stage 3 lymphoma, as you probably know. Treatment is harder this time. The cancer developed resistance to the previous protocols, so they're trying something more aggressive. I'm sick constantly, exhausted, scared. I spend a lot of time thinking about the first time I had cancer, about you, about everything you did for me that I didn't appreciate until it was far too late. You saved my life, Sarah. I know I said terrible things after, claimed the doctors saved me, that your caregiving was just hovering. But I was wrong. I was so profoundly wrong. The doctors provided treatment, but you provided life. You kept me breathing when I wanted to die. You held me when I was terrified. You sacrificed everything, and I repaid you with the worst betrayal imaginable. I've had a lot of time to think about who I was, about what I became, about the person I chose to be when given the choice between gratitude and selfishness. I chose selfishness. I chose cruelty. I chose to throw away 28 years of marriage and your 18 months of sacrifice for excitement, validation, youth. Things that meant nothing and cost everything. Vanessa left the moment things got hard. Daniel won't speak to me. My parents are ashamed. I'm facing prison after I finish treatment, assuming I survive it, which isn't guaranteed this time. I've lost everything, Sarah. Everything. And I deserve it. I see clearly now, when you're facing death alone, when you're terrified at 2 a.m. with no one to call, when you're going through the same suffering you experienced before, but without the person who made it bearable, that's when you understand what you had, what you destroyed. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking to reconcile or for you to help me or even to respond to this letter. I just need you to know I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you. You deserved gratitude, respect, love. You deserved to be cherished, not discarded. You taught me something valuable, though you probably don't care. You taught me that actions have consequences, that betrayal comes with costs, that you can't treat people like disposal objects without eventually facing absolute loneliness. I hope you're happy. I mean that. I hope you've moved on, found someone who values you, rebuilt the life I tried to destroy. You deserve every good thing this world can offer. I'll be in prison soon. 18 months, same as the time you spent saving me. The irony isn't lost on me. Maybe when I get out, if I survive the cancer and the sentence, I'll be a different person, a better person. Someone who learned from his mistakes instead of making them repeatedly. But probably not. People don't really change. We just become more of what we always were. And I was always selfish, always entitled, always someone who took without appreciating. I'm sorry, Sarah, for everything. You were the best thing in my life, and I destroyed you for someone who didn't even stay when things got difficult. That's what I deserve to live with and die with. Goodbye. Robert. I read it twice, then 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden agenda, for some angle he was working. But it seemed genuine, broken, honest in a way Robert had never been during our marriage. I put the letter down, looked at Michael, who was reading on the couch, thought about my upcoming conference presentation, about the nonprofit board meeting next week, about the life I'd built from the ashes of Robert's betrayal. Then I took the letter to the kitchen, held it over the sink, and lit it on fire with a match. watched the paper curl and blacken, watched Robert's words turn to ash. Watched 28 years of marriage and 18 months of sacrifice and 6 months of warfare reduced to smoke and carbon. "What was that?" Michael asked, joining me in the kitchen. Robert sent an apology, said he's changed, that he sees clearly now, that he's sorry. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect." I washed the ashes down the drain. His apology means nothing. It doesn't change what happened. It doesn't return my time or my money or the pieces of myself I lost. It's just words from someone who only understands consequences when he's facing them alone. That evening, I attended my caregiver support group, a monthly meeting I'd started facilitating. 15 people, all carrying similar wounds, all betrayed after sacrifice, all learning to rebuild. I got a letter from my ex-husband I shared, full of apologies, claims he's changed, wants forgiveness. "Did you forgive him?" someone asked. "No, but I forgave myself." The room was quiet. Forgiveness isn't about them, I continued. It's not about absolving betrayers or making them feel better about their choices. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from the weight of anger. It's about choosing not to carry their betrayal anymore. So you forgave yourself for what? For wasting 18 months on someone who didn't deserve a single day, for not seeing the warning signs, for sacrificing so much of myself that I almost disappeared, for believing that love meant martyrdom. I forgave myself for all of it. That's the only forgiveness that matters. Later, at home, Michael asked me if I ever regretted documenting everything, fighting back, pursuing the divorce so aggressively. Never, I said. Not for a second. People like Robert count on their victims being too broken, too tired, too overwhelmed to fight back. They count on shame and exhaustion to protect them from consequences. I refused to be that victim. I chose to be meticulous, strategic, patient. I chose to let the truth speak for itself. "You're remarkable," he said. "I'm just someone who kept receipts." But I was more than that. I was someone who'd survived being discarded at her lowest point and turned that pain into power. Someone who'd transformed betrayal into justice. Someone who'd proven that documentation and patience could be more powerful than rage or despair. Robert's letter was ash. His apology was smoke. His consequences were his own to carry. And I was free. Completely. Absolutely free. Free from his manipulation. Free from the weight of his betrayal. Free from caring whether he suffered or survived or learned anything from his cruelty. I'd forgiven myself. That was enough. That was everything. Friends, let me tell you something about sacrifice that nobody warns you about. Sometimes the people you save from drowning pull you under to save themselves. They'll use your strength to survive, then discard you the moment they can breathe without your help. That's not love. That's exploitation wearing love's mask. I learned something profound during those 18 months of caregiving and 6 months of legal warfare. Your worst qualities emerge when you face mortality. Death has a way of revealing who people really are underneath the social polish. Some people face their mortality and become grateful, humble, appreciative of every person who stood beside them. Others face death and become entitled, convinced that survival gives them permission to be selfish, that beating cancer means they've earned the right to hurt whoever helped them live. Robert became the second kind, and Vanessa enabled it because she saw profit in a vulnerable man's gratitude. Here's what I want you to understand, really understand. Document everything. Keep receipts, screenshot texts, save emails, photograph bills, record conversations where legal. Build your evidence file like you're preparing for war, because sometimes you are and you just don't know it yet. The moment you start feeling like something's wrong, trust that instinct and start documenting. Protect yourself financially. If you're caregiving, don't abandon your income completely if you can help it. Find ways to maintain financial independence. Set up separate accounts. Protect your retirement. Your sacrifice shouldn't mean your financial destruction. Know your worth. You are not obligated to destroy yourself to save someone else. Caregiving is noble, but martyrdom that erases you completely isn't love. It's self-destruction. You can be supportive without being consumed. You can be helpful without being exploited. Caregiver abuse is real and devastating. It's insidious because it hides behind gratitude and vulnerability. The person you're helping seems weak, sick, dependent. How could they be abusing you? But abuse isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet manipulation, financial control, emotional exploitation, taking everything you give and demanding more while planning to discard you the moment they don't need you anymore. You don't owe anyone your destruction. Not your spouse, not your parents, not your children, not anyone. Support, yes. Sacrifice within reason, yes. But total obliteration of yourself? Never. That's not what love requires. That's what exploitation demands. Where are we now, 2 years later? I'm thriving. Engaged to Michael, who treats me like the queen I always was but forgot I deserved to be. Consulting for major pharmaceutical companies at $200 an hour. Speaking at conferences about caregiver exploitation. Running the Second Chances Caregiver Fund, which has helped 47 caregivers rebuild after betrayal. Living my absolute best life in ways Robert and Vanessa could never touch or diminish. Robert completed his treatment. He's cancer-free again. Biology doesn't care about morality, but he's alone, bankrupt, and serving his federal sentence. He'll be released eventually, but he'll never rebuild what he destroyed. Vanessa's working 3 retail jobs, still facing civil lawsuits from former patients. Her healthcare career is permanently over. She's 29 and starting from zero, learning the hard way that building your life on someone else's betrayal creates foundations made of sand. The nonprofit is expanding. We're opening a legal defense fund next month, helping caregivers who've been exploited fight back with the same systematic documentation that saved me. If you've ever sacrificed everything for someone who threw it away, drop a like. You're not alone. Your pain is valid. Your rage is justified. Which city are you from? Have you seen caregiver abuse? Drop it in the comments. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be destroyed by the people they saved. Share this story. Someone in your life needs to hear they're not alone. Someone needs to know documentation is power. Someone needs permission to protect themselves. Subscribe if you believe actions have consequences. If you believe justice is possible. If you believe that keeping receipts and fighting smart can overcome betrayal. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Turns out, what I survived didn't kill me, but it absolutely destroyed the man who tried to break me. And that's justice.